Chapter 981. Chu Tian spent so much effort running to the eternal forest just to sever his relationship with the elves. This was too strange. Could Miracle City still be saved? Vivian took out the scroll and tried to activate it, but Augusta flicked his finger and the scroll flew out of her hand. "What are you doing?" Vivian was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Return the scroll to me." Miracle City already has no relationship with the eternal forest. What is the elven princess doing with the humans? Augusta grabbed the scroll and said with a glare, "Not to mention that Miracle City is very dangerous right now. For the princess' safety, please separate yourself from Chu Tian and these humans." "I'll cut your head." Vivian's palm cut open space, wanting to take the scroll back. In the end, a faint golden light appeared around Augusta's palm and blocked Vivian's power. How could the elves have such an uneducated, rebellious princess? Augusta's face sunk. "Your Majesty is too lacking in discipline." "Vivian, you can't be rude to the council chief." The Elven King was a bit embarrassed. He couldn't do anything to this old elf. "You don't need to care about this matter for now. Since you're back, you should stay in the Eternal Forest for a while." "Royal Father, even you treat me like this. I have to go back. Miracle City needs me right now. Pay attention to your words. You are an elf, and you've broken enough of the clan's rules. If you're punished one by one, you'll have to face the wall for over 100 years. Augustus said, "The Elven Council can't let you continue acting willfully. From today onwards, you must learn the Elven race's 10 great laws and 96 etiquettes. When your actions conform to the rules of the Elven race, the Elven Council will let you regain your freedom. Even if I die in Miracle City, I won't learn those broken things. This isn't up to you." Vivian wanted to use her strength to escape, but Augusta pointed at Vivian. The difference in strength between them was too big, so Vivian's source spirit was directly sealed, and she couldn't use any strength at all. "Bring her away." Let me go, Royal Father." Several elven guards escorted Vivian away. Augusta turned to look at the Elven King. "I ask your Majesty for forgiveness, thinking of the princess' future. She is still young and has a lot of potential, so this rebellious nature needs to be polished. As the Elven race's youngest princess, she should be a role model for the other young elves." What else could the Elven King say? Although he was the Elven King in name, he had been the Elven King for less than 100 years. Whether it was influence or prestige, how could it compare to this old fellow who had controlled the Elven Council for 500 years? Of the several dozen seats in the Elven Council, only 5-6 were on the Elven King's side. The rest were all from the conservative and traditional factions led by Augusta. They had followed the Elven race's etiquettes for tens of thousands of years as the highest standard. Their stubborn thoughts were not easy to break. The Elven King looked at the scroll in Augusta's hand. "This scroll seems to have a long-distance teleportation ability. This is an unheard of technology. Has this human called Chu Tian already grasped this spatial technology? I'm afraid the humans have already developed by leaps and bounds." "Humph, our ancestors told us that benefits will blind our eyes, and this kind of development will only bring destruction," Augusta said with a face of disdain. "Only by returning to nature and standing aloof from worldly affairs can we become one with the world and exist in this world. This has been the way the elves have lived for tens of thousands of years. Humans have used their intelligence, abused their strength, and wantonly developed, finally becoming the continent's public enemy. They are not far from destruction." The other people in the Elven Council all nodded. The chairman had said too much. The elves were strong enough to protect themselves. Too much power would make people lose themselves, giving rise to slaughter and evil. Vivian was sealed like this and locked in the golden copper tree. The Elven Council began to force her to study the Elven Code and all kinds of etiquette books. Those several hundred pages of books made her head feel like it was going to explode. She bit her pen while angrily complaining. "Big Brother Chu Tian, you really are a bad person, leaving me here alone." A voice came from outside at this time. "Your Majesty, why are you here?" "I'm here to see Vivian." "You can all leave first. Nothing will happen." "Understood." The Elven King walked into the treehouse and saw that Vivian was still angry. He helplessly smiled and said, "Are you angry that I didn't help you, or are you angry that Chu Tian left you behind?" "I'm angry. I'm angry. You two are making me explode with anger." Vivian almost jumped up when she said this. One was her father, who loved her the most, and the other was her big brother Chu Tian, who she worshipped the most. But these two people treated her like this. Vivian felt like she had been abandoned. So how could she not be angry? "Silly girl, you've been with Chu Tian for several months. Can't you see what kind of person he is?" Vivian was stunned. "What did you say?" "Although I don't know what he wants to do, he must have a reason for doing this." The Elven King looked at Vivian and said, "As for what it is, I think we'll find out soon." "Really?" Vivian was filled with doubt. However, when she thought about Chu Tian's character and actions, she felt that this matter was very strange. Could it be that Chu Tian deliberately broke off with the Eternal Forest and deliberately threw her in the Eternal Forest? What was his goal? Could Miracle City hold on? Could it be that big brother Chu Tian knew he couldn't save Miracle City, so he sent her back to not implicate me? Vivian's heart suddenly tightened when she thought of this. At this time, Miracle City was in a mess because the news of the Four Cities army gathering had arrived. An army of several 100,000 marched towards Miracle City. Flags flew in the air, covering the sky and giving off an aura that could swallow 10,000 miles. Flatten Miracle City. Flatten Miracle City. Flatten Miracle City. The sky above this ancient forest reverberated with shouts filled with monstrous killing intent. The army spread out over 10 kilometers, and the Wings Race Army covered the sky. There were some Wings Race experts that could fly tens of thousands of meters in the air. Once the airships attacked, these Wings Race people would notice them. The Green Giant moved like a small mountain, just like a green wave crushing the forest. Wherever he went, it was like he was being bulldozed by a bulldozer, turning the trees into a mess. Over 100,000 orcs riding war wolves and giant leopards moved quickly, surrounding the left and right wings of the Green Giant. If they came into contact with the enemy, the orc cavalry would be able to charge at them in a short period of time. The spider race was in charge of the rear and underground, so Miracle City had no chance to attack. This kind of scene was rarely seen in the Forest of Chaos. All the locals fell at the sight of this and began to list Miracle City's crimes, expressing their irreconcilable hatred with Miracle City. They swore to join the Four Cities army to fight Miracle City, as if Miracle City was an irreconcilable enemy that killed their families. Wherever the Four Cities army went, there were more and more people responding. Whether it was the tribes or the bandits, they didn't want to miss this chance. Miracle City was finished. There was no suspense in the result of this battle. This was a large forest city that had been in operation for several hundred years. The wealth and resources they had accumulated was enough to make people drool. So who wouldn't want to share? The commander of this city extermination battle was personally appointed by Battle Banner City's city Lord Cao. Cao personally leading the charge was enough to show how important Miracle City was. No wealth, no land, no resources, no weapons. Battle Banner City had to obtain Miracle City's technology. Send down the order. First, send out 50,000 Wings Race troops to attack the mountains around Miracle City, destroying Miracle City's defenses and subduing the tribes that submitted to Miracle City. They will occupy a few strongholds for us, and the Spider Race will build a temporary camp. Yes, Sir City Lord. The messenger quickly sent down the order. A large half of the Wings Race troops left the main army and covered the sky like a swarm of locusts, quickly moving towards the mountain range around Miracle City. Fireballs, wind blades, rocks. All kinds of attacks fell down like a wild storm. They did not encounter any decent challenges, and the Winged Race troops easily swept through the few defensive facilities. Miracle City is too weak. They didn't even resist at all. It didn't take much effort for the Four Cities army to attack Miracle City's perimeter because all the tribes in the mountains around Miracle City seemed to have evaporated. All the tribes were emptied of people. This was a bit strange. Could they have all escaped? Impossible, they all escaped. Why didn't they see them on the way? Most of these tribes had some savings, so even the smallest mosquito was meat. If they ran into them, they wouldn't let them off. But they didn't see any of these tribes, and they didn't find anything valuable in searching their tribes. Did they all take refuge in Miracle City? Strange, with such a large army pressing down on them. Not a single one of the outer powers surrendered. But what did it matter? They were going to be destroyed anyway. Over 100,000 Spider Ray soldiers dug through the mountain rocks and created a temporary camp in less than half a day. Cal led the main army to enter, and various kinds of restrictions and barriers were set up. This army of close to 1 million soldiers faced Miracle City. The Four Cities army didn't even have a stable footing. There are unknown objects flying over. These must be Miracle City's strange weapons. Cal gave a cold laugh. Have the wings race, shoot them down. Miracle City shot out several hundred missiles. The Battle Banner City people knew the might of the source energy weapons. If these things fell into the camp, they would instantly cause large amounts of damage. Therefore, the wings race immediately moved out. This was a race that specialized in speed, and the true spirit experts could easily surpass the speed of sound. Miracle Commerce's missile weapons had just been developed, so there weren't many of them. They were all cut down by the wind blades in the air, and not a single one hit their target. Miracle City has already exhausted all their tricks. Cal was completely assured seeing this. The Four Cities army was a three-dimensional army. The wings race was enough to form a strong defense line, making all of Miracle City's weapons lose their effect. Miracle City was completely sealed off, without any supplies or reinforcements. Although their weapons were very strong, in this kind of situation, how long could they last? Send down the order. Chapter 982. City Lord Cal's cultivation and strength were enough to be ranked among the top experts in the Forest of Chaos. Otherwise, how could he become a City Lord? With this kind of strength, he was attacked by the opponent without him noticing at all. From when the other side made their move to when the attack landed, Cal did not notice it at all. In other words, if the other side wanted to take his life, it was very likely they would have succeeded. The other side did not do this, so why was that? He either had no motive to kill Cal, or he felt that killing Cal was as easy as turning his hand. So, this was not a good time for him, and he did not need to waste any effort to grasp it. When everyone looked over, a figure had appeared in the garden at an unknown time. This was a middle-aged elf who looked gentle and refined. His face was impeccably handsome, even among the elves. There was not the slightest energy fluctuation coming from his body. He looked just like an ordinary person. He was wearing a green robe and had a simple crown on his head. There was a long scepter in his right hand, and a silver-white cloak fluttered in the wind behind him. A legendary name appeared in the minds of Chu Tion and the others. The Elven King Lancelot. There were few people in the Eternal Forest that had seen the Elven King's true appearance, so of course Chu Tion and the others had never seen him before. However, from Vivian's description of her father, they could determine that this person was Lancelot. The power the Elven King used just now came from the scepter in his hand. This scepter was called the Forest Scepter, and it was said that it was made from a branch of the ancient tree of life. It had an unfathomable might, and there was not a second person in the Forest of Chaos qualified to use this weapon. The first feeling the Elven King gave people was not that of a king, but rather that of a well-read scholar or a charming wandering poet. City Lord Cal still could not determine the other side's identity, but like a wild beast that smelled danger, the veins on his forehead tightened, making his face look fierce. His pupils slightly shrank, revealing not killing intent, but rather nervousness. It was like a hunter who was fully focused on attacking suddenly had a piece of red-hot charcoal stuffed in his crotch, but he couldn't cry out. The Elven King was like a smooth and calm jade sculpture. His scepter, which was simple and unadorned, was inserted into the ground. Although it did not emit any energy waves, everyone could clearly feel that the entire garden had become the domain of this expert. His power could erupt from anywhere at any time. "Retreat, I won't kill you." The Elf King opened his mouth and spoke. There was no sense of threat. Instead, it was more like a sincere plea or consolation to an old friend. City Lord Cal's eyes were focused on Chu Tion, but his divine sense and mind were looking at the Elven King. Chu Tion's group had already become bystanders. The atmosphere suddenly froze in that instant. It was like time could not continue to flow in the garden. There was only one person who recognized the Elven King's identity, and that was Kino behind Cal. Kino was not a person from Battle Banner City and had wandered the Forest of Chaos in his early years. He had interacted with the elves before, so he had some understanding of the Elven King and recognized the legendary life scepter. Kino was covered in a cold sweat, not even daring to take a deep breath. Even the slightest extra movement would bring disaster to himself. The Elven King said he was willing to let them go, and these people were relieved of a heavy burden. Although they didn't know why the Elven King would appear here. Since the Elven King had appeared, there was no meaning in fighting here. Just as Kino was thinking about how to tell Cal and make Cal retreat, a voice suddenly rang out. Who would have thought that at this time? Something Kino never thought would happen. Roar! Cal broke through the sound barrier and turned into several figures, charging at Chu Tian's group at the same time. They didn't know who this elf was, but it was most likely related to the Eternal Forest and was most likely here for the Divine Tree. There was no way to obtain the Divine Tree, but at the very least, he had to capture these people. Otherwise, what meaning was there in this battle? How could Cal be willing? When the Elven King saw this, he gently stabbed the forest scepter into the ground a few inches, and a vast power spread through the ground. Countless green vines drilled out, easily lifting Cal, who was flying at supersonic speed, into the air. Several dozen vines shot out. Like piercing through a piece of paper, they instantly pierced through Cal's body. Cal revealed a look of disbelief. If you kill me, His Majesty the Beast King will not let you off. The Elven King gave a soft sigh. Lancelot, will take responsibility for this. Lancelot. When Cal heard this name, his mind turned blank, and his eyes popped out like a dead fish. He finally knew why he was completely defeated. So it was the Elven King? Dying in his hands wasn't an injustice. With a tearing sound, the Orc City Lord was torn to pieces. Even someone as strong as Cal, in front of the Elven King, he was no different from a little bug. He couldn't even take a single blow. We didn't know it was His Majesty the Elven King. Kino's head was covered in sweat as he quickly bowed. We'll leave now. We'll retreat now. The Elven King gave a faint nod. It was like they had been granted amnesty as they immediately ran away without even thinking about it. Nan Gongyin called out in a dissatisfied voice. Could it be we're letting them go like this? Although the other side was the Elven King, Nan Gongyin was very familiar with Vivian, so she didn't feel any pressure when she saw her father. These fellows made a mess of Miracle City. Wasn't it too easy to let them go like this? Of course. This was already the best result for Miracle City. Although the Elven King was strong, it was impossible for him to fight against 1,000,000 people by himself. Every minute this battle lasted, Miracle City would suffer more damage. The Elven King killing Cal was just a deterrent. After all, with Cal's death, the highest leader of the Four Cities army was gone. If Kino brought the news back, these people would definitely choose to retreat. The Elven King's prestige was really useful. Kino brought the news of Cal's death and ordered the Battle Banner City army to retreat. The various armies all knew of the Elven King's arrival and immediately rushed to join the retreat. The Elven King was one of the strongest people in the Forest of Chaos. His appearance meant that the Eternal Forest was interfering. Who knew how many experts came from the Eternal Forest, and for them to reach the level of the Eternal Forest, this kind of battle was not something they could endure. Your Majesty Lancelot, I never thought that you would personally come. The Flower Fairies happily surrounded him. The Flower Fairies had a good relationship with the elves, so Lulu and the others had the chance to see the Elven King in their endless lives. The Elven King Lancelot walked in front of the Tree of Life and looked at the 3-foot-tall divine tree with a shocked gaze. This is the ancient Tree of Life? I never thought that it would actually succeed. Your Majesty, this is all Chu Tian's credit, the Flower Fairy Lulu said. If it wasn't for Chu Tian's method of activating the seed, we wouldn't have been able to make it sprout no matter how much effort we put in. The Elven King looked over Chu Tian's group. Meng Qingwu and Meng Ying were a bit nervous. The Elven King was the ruler of the Eternal Forest, the strongest existence among the elves, and one of the most influential experts in the Forest of Chaos. Even Meng Qingwu found it hard to maintain a calm attitude when facing this kind of person. What you did this time was too risky. If I came a bit later, even if you could escape, the Tree of Life would have suffered a mishap. The Elven King looked back at the ancient Tree of Life. This tree's accident has already attracted the attention of many people, so I suggest moving it to the Eternal Forest. This way, it will be easier for the Eternal Forest to irrigate it with the sun's well water, and it will also be protected by the Eternal Forest barrier. Chu Tian shrugged his shoulders and said, "Your Majesty, the Elven King might not know, but once the Tree of Life sprout, its roots will connect to the spirit vein in the surrounding 1,000 miles, becoming one with the earth. Moving it in this kind of situation will be very risky." "That's right, Your Majesty, the Elven King." Lulu and the others immediately came out to testify. Once the ancient Tree of Life is planted, it can't be moved easily. Not to mention that the Tree of Life seed has been sleeping for countless years. Although it has been awakened with great difficulty, it is still in a very weak state. If it is dug out now, it will be killed. If it was just Chu Tian's side of the story, the Elven King would be skeptical. This fellow was very sly. Who knew if he was deceiving them? But now that even the Flower Fairies said this, he had no choice but to believe it. The Flower Fairies were the best gardeners on the continent, and the Flower Fairies were pure and kind. It was impossible for them to deceive the Elven King. The Elven King knit his brows. This is troublesome. No matter what, many thanks to the Elven King for saving us. Chu Tian cupped his hands to the Elven King. Only Miracle City is in a mess right now, and we need to clean up the mess, so this one can't receive you. After saying this, Chu Tian did not wait for the Elven King to say anything before leaving with his eyes. Miracle City had experienced the largest calamity since it was built, and it was impossible to estimate the current losses. If one were to say that the damage within the city was still beyond the acceptable range, the situation on the outside was not too optimistic. The native tribes had suffered heavy losses, and many factories had also been damaged. Meng Qingwu did a simple calculation. This battle had caused damage, casualties, losses, and looted resources for Miracle City. These direct losses reached around 100,000 source stones. Other than the direct damage and looted resources, they also had to comfort the injured citizens, provide compensation to the tribes that suffered heavy losses, and also reward the soldiers that killed the enemy. This would greatly increase the already tight financial burden. It's fine if it was just like this. Dolores had a depressed look. Miracle Bank will reduce the interest of the tribes by half and also take care of the repairs. We won't earn anything from this loan and will instead suffer a large loss. Anyone would be depressed if this matter was placed on them. Miracle Bank's business model was stable profit, but that was under normal circumstances. If there was a natural disaster, there was a possibility of losing money. Don't worry, there will be many difficulties in the future, but it will pass. Chu Tian maintained an optimistic attitude. After this battle, Miracle City's reputation will rise, and our future development in the Forest of Chaos will be even smoother. Is that so? I hope it's like this. Miracle City really couldn't take this anymore. Meng Qingwu tightly knit her brows. She thought that Chu Tian was too optimistic. The 4 cities have been defeated by Miracle City. This matter would indeed make Miracle City famous in the center of the Forest of Chaos. But what about further places? Miracle City had already attracted the attention of a large power like the Eternal Forest. Could their future development be peaceful? Chapter 983. This is bad. A Miracle City bear man ran in front of Nangong Yun while pissing his pants. Big Sister Nangong Yun. The enemy has completely occupied the outer perimeter. I can see it. This old lady isn't blind. Nangong Yun stood on a tall mountain, and she could see the enemy's main camp in the distance. It was simply like a boundless ocean. Damn, they've really spent a lot to attack Miracle City. Miracle City's outer ring of mountains was now occupied by the 4 cities' allied army. Miracle City was defending the inner mountain range. They had no choice but to give up the outer perimeter because Miracle City had to shrink their defensive circle. That way, they could gather a stronger force. Everyone was filled with fear. What should we do now? Nangongyun's brows jumped up. What do you think we can do? Fiercely beat them for me. The four cities' armies were unstoppable, but that didn't mean Miracle City was a fish on the chopping block. Although Miracle City didn't have a barrier that covered the entire city, there were several hundred green protectors that could support a small barrier. Meng Qingwu urgently took out all the source energy weapons in Miracle Commerce's storage, and even the weapons that were sold to the Great Summer Country's army to Miracle City. There were over 500 source energy cannons, over 30 strengthened source energy cannons, and tens of thousands of other heavy firearms. Miracle Commerce had used all their resources. The tribes around Miracle City also showed a high degree of loyalty. Not a single tribe betrayed them. These over 2 million locals brought their families to Miracle City. The stronger young men joined the battle, contributing quite a bit to Miracle City's defenses. Dongfang Howren was urgently called back, and even Arnold and the others were called back. Even Meng, Yingying, and Dolores had to join the battle. Many experts from the Great Summer Country were sent over to help. Miracle City gathered all the battle strength they could gather together. This was definitely a life and death battle for Miracle City. Hong! Hong! Two large explosions came from the west side of the mountain range. Nangongyun received Zero's voice on her cell phone. Pay attention. There are enemies trying to sneak attack Miracle City. Because they have entered our minefield, they have been stopped. Nangongyun took out a map of the enemy. This map was a piece of leather-coated material. The second Miracle Smart Brain controlled the undead spiritual radar to scan the Miracle Mountain range once per second. After processing the data, it was sent to the central Smart Brain Zero, and Zero sent the data to the map in the hands of the frontline commanders. There were two frontline commanders. Nangongyun was in charge of the southern line, and Dongfang Howren was in charge of the northern line. Each line was divided into several areas, and each area had troops. Dolores was in charge of the quick response troops. Meng Yingying was in charge of the airships and the Air Force, and Meng Qingwu was in charge of the Central Command. Humph, idiot, simply seeking death. Nangongyun could clearly see several groups trying to sneak attack. Miracle City had already expected the Spider Race warriors to use this method, so they had placed all the source energy mines around Miracle City. These Spider Race warriors were close to the mines, so it would be strange if they weren't blown to pieces. Zero's voice sounded out again. Pay attention. The enemy is approaching in large numbers. They are mainly attacking from the southwest. I have already sent out intercepting missiles. I ask all commanders to prepare for battle. Was it finally coming? Because the battlefield was too big, the naked eye couldn't see the entire situation. Nangongyun took a few pictures of the enemy situation map, and the enemy situation map immediately changed from the life signal distribution map to the Heavens Eye Airships High Altitude Reconnaissance map. Nangongyun could clearly see a large group of Wing Clan troops rushing towards her position. These fellows were very sly. They were moving close to the mountains, so the naked eye couldn't see them. There was no doubt they were trying to catch Miracle City off guard. Nangongyun revealed a cold smile. 9 o'clock direction. Source energy cannons, fire. The 80 source energy cannons aimed at the gap between the two mountain peaks. Although nothing appeared, they didn't care about this and just followed the order. The cannons instantly fired. When the source energy cannons fired, large amounts of dark clouds charged out from the back of the mountain. The source energy cannons landed on them and caught the winged race off guard. A large amount of them were instantly killed, with at least several hundred casualties. Nangongyun broke out in laughter. These damn birdmen aren't staying in their bird nests. They actually followed the green frogs to seek death. Let them see Miracle City's might. Cannons, firearms, crossbows, and javelins. Miracle City's advanced source energy weapons and the locals' traditional crossbows and javelins were used together. All kinds of lights were released in the sky, being incomparably dazzling and releasing terrifying explosions. The winged race's nimble figures kept moving back and forth in the sky. After all, they were the elites of a forest city, and each winged ray soldier was an expert picked out of 100. They moved too fast, and most of Miracle City's attacks missed. Various kinds of wind blades and flames kept flying at Miracle City's defenders. The Green Protectors opened their arms and created barriers one after another, blocking the winged race's attacks. At this time, a large group of green giants were like gorillas, aggressively climbing over the mountains. They were all like human-shaped King Kong, charging forward against the storm rifles with just their flesh and blood bodies. The orc knights on the ground turned into countless black streams that charged through the canyon. The battle between the two sides instantly entered a white-hot stage. Cal looked from afar and couldn't help being shocked. He was very happy that he didn't attack Miracle City alone, otherwise with Battle Banner City's strength. Even if they sent out all their troops, they still wouldn't be able to take Miracle City. Even if they took Miracle City, Battle Banner City's troops would all be killed, and the gains would not make up for the losses. It was just like what Kino said. In the end, it was all for the other powers. Miracle City's performance was just too unexpected. Miracle City did not have a large city protecting barrier. These mountain ranges to Miracle City, not only did they not become a barrier, they even hindered their counterattack to a certain degree. Miracle City was a typical forest city. It was just too big, so this kind of battle could not be compared to normal battles. The defending side needed to defend a large area that was full of holes. On the other hand, the attackers were able to take advantage of any gap and attack the opponent's weak spots from anywhere. Miracle City was not just at a disadvantage from the start of the battle. In terms of military strength, Miracle City's army was mainly made up of personally trained berserkers, tens of thousands of new recruits, the gnome army of Green City, and finally the local army. This kind of mixed-together army was not only not coordinated, it was not strong at all. The Four Cities army was different. This army's main force was made up of the elites of the various cities. It was not something Miracle City could compare to. Miracle City, who didn't have the right time, location, and manpower, could actually block the wild attacks of the Allied army. The source energy weapons mended the large gap in strength. The city's dynamic intelligence system mended the gaps in the city's defenses. It was because of this that Miracle City could block the Four Cities army, at least blocking the first attack. Cal had been attacking for almost an hour, but he still couldn't break through Miracle City's defenses. The Four Cities army was already in chaos, and if they kept fighting like this, they would lose more than they gained, so they immediately retreated. This was truly a bloody battle. The Wings race lost 20,000 soldiers. The Green Giants lost 15,000 soldiers. The Spider People lost 30,000 soldiers, and the Orc Cavalry lost 25,000 soldiers. A total of 90,000 people died. Cal's face instantly turned livid. Although Miracle City's losses weren't small, this kind of losses far surpassed their expectations. The Wings race leader complained to Cal, City Lord Cal, Miracle City's strength is much stronger than we imagined. Our Wings race lost over 20,000 soldiers, but we couldn't even break through the enemy's defenses. I dare bet that Miracle City's losses aren't as many as ours. Are you doubting this City Lord abilities? Cal gave a cold snort. Miracle City clearly has some unknown probing ability. During the battle, I sent out at least 10 sneak attacks, but no matter which mountain they sneaked into, they were all intercepted by Miracle City. As for the power of their weapons, you should have experienced it yourself. Just tell me what we should do. The Green Giant leader violently cut him off. Our losses are this heavy. The blood of our clansmen can't be spilled for nothing. Miracle City must be taken down. No need to rush. City Lord Cal sat in his seat and said with a confident expression, "Today's attack was not smooth, but Miracle City's losses are not small. Their weapons are quite worn out, and they are too reliant on these weapons. We just need to recruit large amounts of Forest Tribe warriors and gather them into an army of 1,000,000. They will attack from many directions and attract their firepower at the same time, greatly reducing the pressure on us. We will definitely be able to break through Miracle City in one fell swoop." Everyone nodded. It was reasonable they would do it like this. At the end of today's battle, although the Four Cities army was in chaos, Miracle City's firepower was clearly weaker. To Miracle City, it was very strenuous to block this kind of fierce attack, and it consumed a large amount of their battle strength. When Nangong Yun returned to the city lord's castle, her face was covered in burn marks and her clothes were in tatters. On the battlefield today, the area she was in charge of had been heavily attacked. Nangong Yun was also a madman. Although the other side had experts like Clouds, she still charged forward without a care for her own safety. If she didn't have the Starlight Immortal Body, how could she have the great Nirvana soul? Without the Starlight Immortal Body, even 10 lives wouldn't be enough. Dongfang Haoran and the others also came back. They were all heavily injured and the situation was not good. Everyone reported the situation. Although the defensive line was defended, they had paid a large price. Dolores said with knit brows, "There are several minefields that have almost no source energy mines left. If we fight again, I'm afraid we won't be able to resist the Spider Army." If they couldn't resist the Spider Army, the consequences would be very serious. These fellows might just appear in the center of Miracle City. At the critical moment of the battle today, I used several Heaven's Punishment airships to reverse the situation. In the end, when we dropped the bombs halfway, 5-6 birdmen found the airships. Meng Ying indignantly said, "Those birdmen are at least at the Heaven's Spirit Realm." They were too fast, the airships couldn't escape, and the Heaven's Punishment were all destroyed. There's also me. Nangong Yun slammed her fist on the table. 60% of the cannons on this side were destroyed by them. I'm afraid we won't have enough firepower if we fight again. Big Sister Qingwu, do we still have any cannons in storage? Give me another 100 to replenish. No more. Meng Qingwu also felt like her head was about to explode. She shook her head with a long sigh. Now that the Great Summer Country's 4 states Lake Fleet's cannons have been sent here, we've used up all our strength and resources in this battle. There's no other way. Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay. What should they do? Miracle City's defensive line had not been broken, but their defensive power had been greatly reduced. Chapter 984. Move it quickly. We have many soldiers who are injured and need treatment. We need to quickly send these medicines over to everyone. How are the canned food preparations going? If there is any stock, send some over from the Great Summer Country. We need to ensure the soldiers' food. Under Meng Ying's orders, several hundred employees loaded boxes of supplies onto the airships. After filling up 5 airships, Meng Ying boarded one of them with Chu Tian. They rose up from the warehouse and slowly headed for the front lines. When they arrived in front of the airship's observation window, Meng Ying could clearly see that the beautiful Miracle City had now turned into a foul atmosphere. Large pieces of the mountain had collapsed, and large pieces of the forest had been burned. In just a few short days, Miracle City had turned into a scene of devastation. War was truly a demon. Miracle City had lost over 40,000 soldiers, and over 70 to 80,000 people were injured, which was even less than the attackers. The main reason was that Miracle City had deployed large amounts of source energy weapons to defend, and they had ended the battle at a critical moment when the battle was about to fall into a dangerous situation. If the battle had dragged on for another day, the casualties would have increased by several times. Meng Ying was a bit sad. Our Miracle City has good mountains and rivers, but now many places have been destroyed beyond recognition. Chu Tian gently hugged her shoulder. Don't be sad. Miracle City has the ancient Tree of Life. I believe that with the Tree of Life's power, it is very easy to repair the mountains and forests. Meng Ying nodded in a gratified manner. Warriors of Miracle City, the enemy has been completely defeated. Miracle City has won. City Lord Chu Tian and the production minister Meng Ying have personally come to congratulate everyone, preparing food and medicine for everyone. Everyone can be assured, your sacrifice for Miracle City will not be in vain. Every drop of blood you shed for Miracle City will make Miracle City even more prosperous, protecting your future generations. Each brave warrior that fights for Miracle City will forever be remembered by Miracle City. Before the airships landed, there were shouts coming from their loudspeakers. When the citizens and soldiers heard this, they all cheered out. This victory was too incredible. This was the fruit of victory that belonged to every Miracle City member. The 5 airships slowly landed. Under Chu Tian and Meng Yingying's personal command, the boxes of canned food and medicine were brought out and sent into the hands of the citizens and soldiers. There was a call for mobilization from all over the city. Meng Qingguo personally gave a speech, first praising the victory before she sent out a call for mobilization. The surrounding tribes had suffered heavy losses in the battle, so they needed to mobilize everyone in and out of Miracle City to join in the repair work. When the order was given, the entire city responded. Whether it was the gnomes in Miracle City or the people from the surrounding tribes, they all responded. Following this, the 200,000-300,000 people split into small teams, running to different tribes to do the repair work. The entire scene was filled with noise, making people feel a strange feeling in their hearts. This was a kind of warmth that he had never felt before. It was more like a sense of belonging to his home. Miracle City had not just obtained victory this time. It also promoted the unity of the local tribes in Miracle City. The Miracle Broadcasting Station seized this chance to report the situation in the various regions in real time, publicizing the positive and hot-blooded events that happened during the war, promoting the harmonious scene of the tribes and the city united as a family. They even planned to make a related movie. In short, for several hundred years, the tribes in the forest had been in conflict with each other, and the tribes often had conflicts with the city. After this experience of fighting together, it greatly increased the friendship between the tribes and the city. Chu Tian and Yingying were busy distributing the supplies. Nangong Yin anxiously rushed over to ask, "Boss, we caught a total of 60,000 captives. What should we do with them?" This many? Nangong Yin didn't wait for a reply and first said her own opinion. "I think we should just kill them. Since they are invading other people's homes, they should be prepared to pay the price with their lives. Killing them will raise the morale of Miracle City's people and intimidate these thieves, making it so that the enemies won't dare invade again. This is over 60,000 people." Meng Yingying revealed a look of disbelief. Kill over 60,000 people? What kind of blood would flow like a river? This method is just too cruel. What else can we do if we don't kill them? Nangong Yin was an extreme martial artist, but she wasn't a bloodthirsty person. She felt that killing them was wrong, but she couldn't think of a better method. These are all villains that have invaded Miracle City. Many of their hands are dyed with the blood of Miracle City's people. If we let them go like this, it will affect the morale of Miracle City's people. Meng Yingying gave a suggestion, but our Miracle City will need to expand in the future, and we will need to deal with further tribes. If we kill 60,000 people at once, and most of these people are locals, I'm afraid it will arouse their hostility towards Miracle City, which is not good for our company's development in the future. What you say isn't wrong. Nangong didn't know what to do. She couldn't kill them and could not kill them. 60,000 mouths had to be eaten. Miracle City's finances were already collapsing. How could they support all these people in the long term? Boss, you should make the decision. You still need to ask me such a simple question? We can't release them like this. They're our own sins, so of course we have to pay the price. Chu Tian rolled his eyes, but there's no need to kill them. Go find the young miss and make a list of the prices of the captives. Send the list to the tribes and cities and have them redeem them with money. As for the price, of course the darker the better. What if they don't redeem them? Don't redeem them? Then they can't blame Miracle City. After all, Miracle City gave the captives a chance, but their tribes gave up on this chance. Miracle City is already being extremely benevolent. Chu Tian paused before saying, if they don't redeem them for a long time, then lock them up as slaves for Miracle City or sell them to slave traders. In short, the ransom or other income will all be used as compensation for the casualties. Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun's eyes lit up. This method was good. Not only did it leave some leeway to not offend these locals, it would create a benevolent image in the forest. It would also give the Miracle City people more compensation, easing Miracle City's financial situation and stabilizing the hearts of the Miracle City people. Boss is too smart. We'll do it like this. Right now, the entire Miracle City was busy repairing after the battle. Chu Tian was the city lord, so naturally he had to personally reward the citizens and soldiers. Therefore, he brought the production minister Meng Yingying to give out benefits and rewards. Nangong Yun was the city defense and military minister in Miracle City. Her task was to deal with the captives and repair the source energy weapons. Dolores was the Minister of Commerce and Finance, so of course she had to calculate the losses and comfort the tribes. Dongfang Haoran was Miracle City's general, so he had to clean up the troops and let Miracle City's army recover their battle strength. Meng Qingwu was in charge of the overall situation, so of course she was the busiest person. Not only did she have to deal with the talismans, she also had to plan the repairs after the battle. Luckily, there was Smart Brain Zero's help, so she didn't need anyone else to help her with this large amount of work. The Elven King was completely forgotten on the side. Of course, the Elven King Lancelot didn't care about these small matters. While he was helping the flower fairies cultivate the ancient tree of life in the Miracle Gardens, he was also observing Miracle City's situation. When Lancelot saw that Miracle City had suffered such a large disaster, they actually recovered in an orderly manner. There was no chaos during the entire process, which made him very shocked. There were over 10 races living in Miracle City's area. Not to mention this kind of chaotic time, even in normal situations, it would be very chaotic. The different races in Miracle City all seemed to have a tacit understanding. They all wished for Miracle City to be strong from the bottom of their hearts, which was a very rare scene in the Forest of Chaos. Although Chu Tian's team was a bit immature, they had already displayed outstanding abilities. Finally, Miracle City's pacification work was finished. Chu Tian gathered the city's high management, Clark, and the various tribe leaders for a meeting, mainly commending everyone for their good performance in the city's crisis. Chu Tian also gave the 100,000 citizens to the various tribes. The tribes in the Miracle Mountain Ridge were like villages, and Miracle City was like a large city. The villagers being able to enter the large city was a matter worth being proud of. After all, if they lived in Miracle City, not only would they be safer, they would also receive many benefits as citizens in the future, making their lives more colorful. Chu Tian gave the 200,000 slots. This was a very good thing for these tribes. Dolores finally let out a long sigh of relief after the meeting was over. It's finally over. We need to think of a way to make money. The hole in our funds is too big. Meng Qingwu asked, Zero, how long can our financial situation last? Reporting to Sir City Lord, most of our resources have been invested into the reconstruction budget after the war. Zero truthfully replied, because the surrounding tribes have been heavily injured and the industrial park has been damaged. Miracle Bank has large amounts of bad debts. Miracle Commerce's current financial situation is not enough to cover it. If we continue with our current expenditure and income, we estimate that our finances will collapse in 2-3 months. Meng Qingwu tightly knit her brows. It's actually this serious? It seems like we need to open new markets as soon as possible and obtain new income to cover our current situation. Actually, with Miracle Commerce's conditions and abilities, if they were given a year or so to stabilize, these problems would not be a problem at all. The problem was, would there really be such a chance? Meng Qingwu could foresee that in the future, Miracle City would become the focus of the entire forest. They could barely hold on now, but they couldn't let it become chaotic in the future. If there was another similar battle, Miracle City really wouldn't be able to hold on. When Meng Qingwu was thinking of countermeasures, Meng Yingying called. She anxiously shouted, Elder sister, this is bad. Quickly come to the transport tower. There are many people coming from the Eternal Forest, and they're all shouting that they want to steal our Miracle City. Chapter 985. The Heaven's Eye airship looked over the entire battlefield. The radar made it impossible for people to hide. No matter how fast Cao's army moved, they couldn't escape Meng Qingwu's grasp. Now that Cao's army had a large change, they should be preparing for an all-out attack. This meant that there would be an even more intense battle coming up. Miracle City's greatest disadvantage was their lack of a city-protecting barrier, but their source energy weapons were their greatest advantage. Cal clearly wanted to spread out Miracle City's firepower, making it easier for his main force to enter Miracle City. This plan wasn't bad. Zero. Analyze the situation. Yes, Sir Vice City Lord. Zero's voice came from the speaker in a room before falling into a few seconds of silence. It was most likely he was using a supercomputer to complete a large calculation. The second smart brain has analyzed the data, and the results are as follows. The number of enemies is between 800,000 and 900,000, and it is still increasing. The enemy has been deployed. The first south area has 50,000. The second area has 80,000. The third area. From the current situation, most of the life signatures are moving to the south, but their life signatures are not high. It is a feint. There are large amounts of strong life signatures on the west side. Although there aren't as many as the south side, it is still the enemy's main force. I suggest we deploy the heavy weapons to the west and use the ground troops and a few source energy weapons to block the south immediately. The southern defensive line that suffered the most damage today was the one that suffered the heaviest attack. Cao's main camp was also on the south side. According to normal logic, the attack should be focused on this position. There was something wrong with Cao's army deployment now. They seemed to have placed a large number of troops on this side, but it was just a feint. The main force of the four cities' army was attacking from the west, crossing over 100 miles. Did they want to catch Miracle City off guard? With the second Smart Brain's warning system, this kind of thing would never happen. After Meng Qingwu understood the situation, she still couldn't be optimistic. Can you analyze the success rate of the next wave of attacks based on the current weapons and army situation? Zero was silent for a few seconds before saying, I'm sorry, Vice City Lord. Because the battlefield is too big and there are too many variables, it already surpasses my calculations. Adding in the lack of data on the enemy, I can't give an accurate number. But if we use a rough calculation, I think it's less than 30%. Less than 30%? It wasn't just Meng Qingwu who knit her brows this time. The others all felt very serious. Where's the city lord at this time? Dongfang Haoran was a bit confused. In this kind of critical moment, wasn't it time for Chu Tian to show his usefulness? He should have a way. Meng Qingwu was filled with anger thinking of Chu Tian. This bastard had taken Vivian to the Eternal Forest, but the result was nothing, and he even brought Vivian down with him. It was fine if you said that. They just had to think of another way. Who would have thought that after Chu Tian came back, he would hide in the garden and no one knew what he was doing? Miracle City can't hold on. We have to call him out to think of a way no matter what. Just wait, I'll call him. Meng Yingying called Chu Tian's number and was prepared to fiercely reprimand Chu Tian. Who would have thought that before she could say anything, Chu Tian would say a bunch of things first? What did you say? Oh, wait a bit. Meng Yingying put away the phone and looked at the others with a strange expression. Chu Tian is calling everyone to the garden. Miracle City was already in danger, and Chu Tian was calling them to the garden? Meng Yingying explained. Chu Tian said that Miracle City's predicament is about to be solved and the solution is in the garden. He wants us to quickly go and help. Nan Gongyan shouted. What about Miracle City? What if the enemy attacks again? Dongfang Haoran took the initiative to say, Me and the great summer marquises have a good understanding of the source energy weapons, so we can temporarily defend the situation. Since the city lord is confident in solving the problem, we should ask everyone to quickly go. They could only do this. Normal people couldn't understand Chu Tian's thoughts, but they trusted Chu Tian and hoped that Chu Tian could do something shocking. Therefore, they gave the command to Dongfang Haoran and the other great summer marquises, and they quickly ran to the miracle gardens. Chu Tian's spirit gathering array had a camouflage effect, so they couldn't see the situation inside from the outside. However, once they entered the barrier, it was like they were in a different world. The spiritual energy in the garden was completely sealed, so it was a place filled with life. Now, it was enveloped by an incomparably vigorous life force. The entire garden was covered in a layer of faint green light. With every breath he took, he could feel pure life force pouring into his body. The life energy here was strong and pure, just like a giant energy field. Even if they were cut by a knife, the terrifying life energy would quickly heal the wound. Chu Tian was standing beside a six-pointed star array. This primitive spatial aura gathering device had been in operation for several days. It was like a squeezer squeezing out the primitive spatial aura from the subspace. Since it was in operation, it had squeezed out at least 100 subspaces. Several dozen energy columns had been used up. These energy columns were refined from Oldman Small Town's new oil. The total amount of energy could keep Miracle City running for several months, but it had been used up in just a few days. We're about to succeed. We're about to succeed. Sisters, everyone put in a bit more effort. Lulu had led over 100 flower fairies to fight for several days. They looked very tired now, but they were very excited and happy. In the center of the flower fairies, there was a thing floating in the air. It was a bead-sized thing that was completely translucent green, releasing a bright light. The energy in the entire garden was released by this little thing. This was this. Nangong Yun stared at the glowing thing with wide eyes. Something that can release such a strong life energy. Perhaps it is a supreme divine item. Miracle City has this kind of thing. How come I didn't know about it? Meng Qingwu knit her brows as she looked at it for a minute. Large chunks of heavenly book memories appeared in her mind. The Tree of Life Seed. This is a fully activated Tree of Life Seed. The Trance and Flower Fairies had asked Shu Tian to help awaken the seed, but the Flower Fairies were usually in charge of it, so Meng Qingwu had never seen it before. The reason why Meng Qingwu could recognize it was mainly because of her special source spirit. Meng Qingwu's source spirit had countless ancient memories sealed in it. Only when she met the corresponding item would these memories awaken. Meng Qingwu finally understood what Chu Tian wanted to do. Young Miss, Ying Nangong, what are you looking at? Chu Tian pulled everyone into the array without any explanation. The Tree of Life has already been activated. Now is the best time for it to germinate. We have to lock in the energy for the flower fairies, allowing it to display its greatest effect. This seed's growth is related to Miracle City's future, so whether it succeeds or fails, quickly come over. There was no time to slowly explain. Several people poured their spirit energy into the source energy array under Chu Tian's command, releasing an energy cover around them. After the energy the flower fairies poured into the seed bounced off, it was reflected back when it hit the energy cover. It would not disappear and would continue to be used. The over 100 flower fairies worked together to activate it. The Tree of Life's seed absorbed more and more essence, and the light became brighter and brighter. The life energy it released was even more vigorous, but this life energy couldn't break through Chu Tian's little barrier. It was completely sealed inside, forming a glass cover filled with a green light. Chu Tian, Meng Qingwu, Meng Ying, and Nangong Yun were all immersed in this ancient life energy. Although the energy was very strong, it did not harm the body at all. It could even be absorbed by the human body to achieve the effect of increasing one's cultivation. After all, this was an ancient Tree of Life seed. Even a single seed could be considered a divine-grade seed. Chu Tian could clearly feel his spirit energy growing. The surrounding energy was very rich, and if he absorbed it all into his body, it wouldn't be a problem for his cultivation base to increase by several layers. But Chu Tian quickly suppressed this thought. Increasing his cultivation base by several layers was very attractive, but this energy was the key to nurturing the Tree of Life seed. If he absorbed too much, it would affect the seed's germination. His cultivation base could increase at any time. If he missed the Tree of Life, there wouldn't be another one. Time passed like this, second by second. At this time, the sounds of killing filled the sky outside Miracle City. Cao's army launched a wild storm of attacks at Miracle City again. Miracle City's defensive firepower had weakened by quite a bit. Not only did Cao's main army retain their battle strength, they also gathered a large number of forest tribes. Under these waves of attacks, Miracle City was like a small boat struggling in a wild storm. Miracle City can't hold on much longer. Kill, kill. Kill your way in and slaughter them all. The morale of the four cities' army was high, and Miracle City's defenders were pushed back again and again. Cal revealed a cold smile. He understood that there was no suspense in this battle. Miracle City's destruction was already a foregone conclusion, and the city was destined to turn to ashes. He made a hand signal to the experts beside him, led by Kino. When they attacked Miracle City, they would immediately capture all of Miracle City's high-level members and researchers. As for resources, let these brainless fellows steal them. Just as Cal's plan was about to succeed, an unexpected situation occurred. There was a strong fluctuation in the center of Miracle City that spread several hundred miles in the blink of an eye. It was like the earth was breathing. The wind and clouds in the sky changed as lightning flashed and thunder roared. Home! Several dozen bolts of lightning fell down. They suddenly fell in the center of Miracle City. The second wave, the third wave, the fourth wave. They were baptized by 9 waves of divine lightning. Finally, a powerful pressure was released from the center of Miracle City, instantly covering a range of over 1,000 miles. What kind of powerful divine might and power was this? The forest that had been destroyed in the battle was instantly revived, and new shoots came out. The wounds of the soldiers were instantly healed, making people feel like they were bathing in a spring breeze. The impact of this power and the range it affected was not something normal people could understand. No matter who saw it, their minds would turn blank, and there would only be one thought left. A spiritual god had appeared. That's right, only a spiritual god could have this kind of momentum. Whether it was the Dragon Palace in the depths of the Dragon's Ridge, the Black Dragon sleeping in countless crystals, or the Titan standing on top of the Giant's Palace covered in lightning, or the savage highlands looking down from above, or even the ruler hiding in the darkness underground, or the large characters in the Western Sea, they were all alarmed by the movements in the center of the Forest of Chaos. Chapter 986. The thing Meng Qingwu was most worried about had finally happened. The ancient tree of life being planted in Miracle City would attract the attention of the forest giants, making the relationship between Miracle City and the Eternal Forest even more complicated. This was because the ancient tree of life was like a god to the Wood Elves, just like how the demonic god religion worshipped the little fox. How could the elves allow such an important divine item to be possessed by a group of outsiders? If this conflict couldn't be resolved, there would be a large problem. In front of the Eternal Forest, Miracle City's strength was too insignificant. Meng Qingwu did not dare be negligent. She put down what she was doing and rushed over. Vivian wanted to build the transport tower for the Eternal Forest to benefit both Miracle City and the Eternal Forest, but when several dozen Elven Council members were sent over, the entire matter developed in a completely unexpected direction. The ancient tree of life had already grown to around 2 meters in just 2-3 days. The life energy it released was even more vigorous, and it began to display its abilities. This divine tree was planted in the center of the garden, and it immediately connected to the several hundred-mile spiritual veins. It extracted even more pure spiritual energy from the depths of the spiritual veins, nourishing the surrounding soil by 10 to 100 times. Its effect surpassed the best spirit-gathering array. Miracle City's spiritual energy increased day by day, and each grain of soil was filled with energy. The ancient tree of life could continuously release life energy, nourishing all the surrounding plants and animals, especially the elixirs in the garden. Their growth in a day was equivalent to a month of growth in the past. In other words, the growth of a sacred herb in several weeks was equivalent to a year in a normal environment. If an herb was planted for several years, wouldn't it become a 1,000-year-old herb? Even if Miracle City didn't do anything, they could just buy large amounts of low-age herbs and sell them to earn large amounts of money. Not to mention the fact that the ancient tree of life had just been born for a few days, its growth potential was unimaginable. Who wouldn't be tempted by this kind of divine object? Not to mention, the ancient tree of life had a special meaning to the eternal forest's elves. Once the ancient tree of life was planted, it would be very difficult to transplant it. At least they didn't have the conditions to transplant it right now. The eternal forest elves had no other choice. They could only think of one method, which was to take Miracle City away and let Miracle City become an elven city again. This was something Vivian never thought of. You don't have the strength to protect Miracle City, and you don't have the strength to protect the ancient tree of life. The elven council member had a firm attitude as he pointed at Chu Tian's nose and shouted, "This tree is too important to the elves. This is the elves' supreme divine object. Could it be you want to take it for yourself?" That's right. From today on, Miracle City will be protected by the Eternal Forest. Another elven council member said, "Of course, the Eternal Forest will remember everything you have done for the Eternal Forest. The elves will give you enough compensation." The elven council's attitude was very consistent. Even Ulysses wanted the elves to personally protect the city. Meng Qingwu felt that the situation had become troublesome when she saw this. The elven council's attitude was very firm, like there was no room for negotiation. Miracle Commerce had put in so much effort into Miracle City. How could they just give it up like this? Ha ha ha. Are you playing dumb, or have you all lost your memories? Chu Tian took out a scroll from his chest. Miracle City has completely severed its relationship with the Eternal Forest. The Eternal Forest's Elven Council and the Elven King have agreed to recognize Miracle City's sovereignty and will not violate it. This contract has the signatures of every member and the Elven King. Could it be that the elves who respect the law and the spirit of contracts are going to go against it today? The Elven Council members all had ugly expressions. Now they finally understood that they had been tricked by Chu Tian. This fellow had definitely been deliberately drawing a line with the Eternal Forest a few days ago. He had already expected this situation after the ancient tree of life appeared. Chu Tian continued to say, "You elves who boast of your civilization, are you prepared to go back on your words?" The expressions of the Elven Council members all changed. Although the elves were divided into conservative and reformist factions, they were still the elves in the end. They were very protective of contracts and laws. After all, this represented the spirit of the elves and was the reason why the elves were so confident. Augusta stood up in a bit of anger. "Human, this is such an obvious trick. Do you think the elves don't have brains? You can say whatever you want." Chu Tian laughed. "The Eternal Forest is 100 times stronger than Miracle City, and Miracle City is definitely weak. Bullying the weak and breaking the contract, what can I do? Just come. At worst, you can kill me and show the hypocrisy of the elves to the world." "Big Brother Chu Tian, don't be angry." Vivian saw that the situation was bad, and she quickly stood up. "Grandpa Speaker, why do you have to force Big Brother Chu Tian? If there wasn't Big Brother Chu Tian, would Miracle City still be Miracle City? Why can't we work together?" "Don't worry, the fairy clan disdains bullying the weak." Augusta gave a cold snort. "It's just a contract made from a piece of paper. It can't bind the Eternal Forest." "The elves will take back Miracle City legally." Chu Tian gave Vivian a look. How hard was it to deal with this group of rotten wood? The elves had a fatal flaw in their character. No matter how old they were, no matter how long they lived, or how much knowledge they accumulated, they would always be simple and inflexible. The elves' tedious laws, Chu Tian could find dozens of loopholes even with his eyes closed. Also, with the elves' slow work efficiency, if they really wanted to argue with Chu Tian, who knew when they would be able to come to a conclusion. Ulysses had interacted with Chu Tian before, so he knew that this wasn't a good idea. He immediately gave a suggestion. "Chu Tian, we know that you've invested your heart and soul into Miracle City. The elves are not an unreasonable race. Why don't we trade cities for cities to compensate you?" "What trade cities? Bring the map over." Ulysses opened a large map, circling an area in the southern part of the Forest of Chaos. This forest is called the Silver Moon Forest. It is not worse than Miracle City in every aspect. The elves have been in Silver Moon City for 5,000 years. It is several times more prosperous than the several hundred-year-old Miracle City. Not only are there no opponents in the surrounding several thousand miles, there is also a perfect natural barrier and city defense system. If you can enter it, you'll have all the resources in your hands. You will still be the city lord of the forest, but your wealth will increase by 10 times. Meng Qingwu was speechless hearing this from his side. These elves were really willing to take out their hands. The other elven counselors revealed difficult expressions. The Silver Moon Forest was the most prosperous city in the Eternal Forest, and in order to obtain Miracle City, they actually made this kind of decision. This was truly hard on them. We won't trade. The elven counselors slapped the table one by one. This human was too arrogant. The elves had clearly made a large concession and given the compensation. What else did he want? There was a reason why Chu Tian disdained Silver Moon City. Silver Moon City was an elven city, and the elves were a highly xenophobic race. If Chu Tian chose to accept the elven city, once the elves left, it would be the same as obtaining an empty city. What use did he have for an empty city? How could Chu Tian care about this bit of wealth and benefits in front of him? In comparison to Miracle City, although it wasn't complete in all aspects, Chu Tian had already gained a foothold here. This place had the best laboratory and the most scholars in the forest, and was in the center of the Forest of Chaos, containing a large amount of potential. The most important thing was the ancient tree of life. It had a very important meaning to Chu Tian. You have to understand, I'm not doing this for myself. This is also for the Eternal Forest and the elves. Chu Tian knew that he had to use reason to deal with these elves. The Eternal Forest rule over Miracle City has 3 fatal flaws. Not only will it make it impossible for you to protect the ancient tree of life, it will even cause the entire Eternal Forest to fall into danger. Nonsense. Alarmist words. Chu Tian didn't care what these old elves said as he continued to explain. First, Miracle City and the surrounding several thousand miles are filled with many different races. This is not compatible with the elves. The elves' culture cannot be established here at all. Could it be that the elves want to chase away these 10 million people? Second, the elves are slow and have no motivation. It would be fine if it was a normal city. You can slowly build a city with your long lifespan. But Miracle City is a land of war, and there is the ancient tree of life as a fuse. Do you still have time to slowly build a city? Third, the ancient tree of life is a relic from the great ancient era, so the elves will naturally have a large increase in strength once they obtain it. However, the ancient tree of life needs a very long time to grow. Do you think the other forest powers will sit and watch you grow? Chu Tian clearly wasn't speaking nonsense. At least the elves had no choice but to face these problems. How would the Eternal Forest develop in Miracle City, and how would they face pressure from all sides? Of course, these problems were not considered by the Elven Council. Although the elves didn't like fighting, they had absolute confidence in their own strength. They did not fear fighting against the forest giants. They just wanted to bring back the ancient tree of life. The ancient tree of life was too important to the elves. When Augusta was prepared to refute Chu Tian, Chu Tian's words aren't wrong. The Elven King, who didn't say anything from the start, spoke up. Let's not discuss Miracle City's matters for now. I'm afraid we have some trouble. Trouble? What trouble? While everyone was puzzled, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the sky. It was as if a hole had been punched in the sky. Soon after, several shadows appeared on the horizon. One of them was a huge shadow. From afar, it was at least 100 meters long. Its entire body was pitch black and covered in black scales. It had an incomparably huge pair of wings. Wherever it flew, even the forest was torn apart by its powerful aura. Augusta's expression fell. This is Dragon Lord. The Elven King Lancelot had a serious expression. Deathwing Nidhogg. Chapter 987. The thousands of years of peace in the Eternal Forest was completely broken. The elven singing stopped for the first time in thousands of years, and the millions of elves stopped creating art. They all left their little tree houses and gathered in front of the Elven King's palace. They were densely packed like an ocean, each one looking up, waiting for the news to be announced. The Elven King convened an emergency Elven Council. Whether it was the gentle Elven King or the serious Augusta, they all had very serious expressions. Everyone, there is no need to doubt it. This is the power of the ancient tree of life. The ancient tree of life was no different from an ancient spiritual god. After the great ancient era, this kind of divine object could not continue existing in this world. Although the elves, treants, and flower fairies had tried to make the ancient tree of life sprout seeds for tens of thousands of years, they did not have much hope. Who would have thought that the ancient tree of life would appear again? This had a very high meaning to the elves. The legends say that the wood elves were born under the protection of the ancient tree of life and had not gone extinct since the great ancient era. The ancient tree of life was not just the ancestor of the elves, it was also the origin of the elven civilization. It was also the source of the elves' power. The ancient tree of life's birth had a very large meaning to the elves. The treants and flower fairies chose to believe Chu Tian in the past. It seems like this was the right decision. The elven vice speaker Ulysses had a face filled with excitement and joy. This must be Chu Tian's masterpiece. This is too incredible, he actually did it. Augusta's long white fur trembled a few times. This was also done by that brat. What kind of divine object was the ancient tree of life? A despicable and despicable human. Even if he had a bit of intelligence, how could he awaken this kind of divine object? The Elven King, Lancelot, spoke. No matter the reason for the ancient tree of life's reappearance, I think it is fate's arrangement. This is a large auspicious sign. Our race is destined to prosper once again. Only the ancient tree of life's appearance has shaken the entire forest. Those fellows should have felt it. We have to personally protect the ancient tree of life. Your Majesty is right, Ulysses said in an approving voice. The ancient tree of life has appeared in Miracle City, and Miracle City is in danger. We can't just sit back and do nothing. This. Augusta was still as stubborn as a rock. The eternal forest can never participate in any disputes. This is a rule passed down by the elves for tens of thousands of years. Do we have to abandon the law of the elves? The Elven King Lancelot was not prepared to give in to Augusta this time. The elven law was set down by the ancestors, and the ancestors set this law to regulate the elves' lives. Now that the era is different, if we stubbornly stick to the ancestors' rules, they will become a shackle to the elves. The ancient tree of life is the belief of the elves. We can't abandon our beliefs and beliefs. That's right. The council members on the Elven King's side all stood up. These people all saw the golden opportunity of a lifetime. The elven law and etiquette had bound the elves for tens of thousands of years. If they could use this chance to break it, the elves would have a chance to rise again. No, this goes against the elves' spirit of law. Augusta fell into a dilemma. This matter is very important. We have to discuss it properly. After all, changing the law is a master. This needs to be discussed by the council. There's no time, Sir Speaker. Ulysses stood up with a serious expression and said, Every minute we delay now, Miracle City will be in more danger. Perhaps because we are late by a minute, the ancient tree of life will be destroyed. Perhaps because we are late by a minute, not only will the elves regret it for eternity, we will become sinners for all eternity. Sir Speaker, do you want to be despised by our descendants and the elves forever? That's right. Sir Speaker, we should make a move. The ancient tree of life is not normal. We can rebuild it after the law is broken. I think even our ancestors will understand us. This time it wasn't just the reformist elves who wanted to make a move. Even the traditional Elven Council members wanted to make a move. It was rare for the Elven Council to be united, but the Elven Council's leader was Augusta. If he didn't nod his head, the Elven Council couldn't make a decision. Sir Speaker has always stressed that the elves are a civilized race, and each elf has the right to make decisions. Now let's see the will of the people. The Elven King did not give Augusta time to hesitate. The millions of elves in the forest raised their heads in anticipation. The Elven King appeared on the balcony of the castle at this time, and his voice spread through the eternal forest with the wind. Although it wasn't loud, It was like there was an invisible force that clearly reached the ears of each elf. I have a piece of good news for everyone. The ancient tree of life has been reborn. With these words, the elves all began to loudly cheer. The ancient tree of life is the origin of the wood elves. It has an even brighter power than the well of eternity. The elves will become even stronger under the protection of the ancient tree of life. The elves were filled with excitement as they excitedly hugged and shouted. This was a historical moment for the elves. But now the ancient tree of life is in danger. It could be destroyed at any moment. The elven king paused, and the entire forest was filled with chaos. The elves were all worried about the ancient tree of life. We are now faced with two choices. The first is to follow the ancestral rules and stay in the forest. This way we can avoid fighting and we can live in peace, but the ancient tree of life could be destroyed or taken away. The second is to change the laws and leave the forest. We will defend the ancient tree of life and the elves' faith, fighting for a better era and future for the elves. However, we will also be drawn into the flames of war. There will be blood, sacrifices, deaths, and even more dangers. Now, as the citizens of the eternal forest, as someone who has grown up bathed in the light of the well of the sun, please make a choice. As soon as the elven king's voice fell, save the ancient tree, save the ancient tree, save the ancient tree. The entire eternal forest was filled with waves of voices. Each elf expressed their strong will, and each elf was filled with passion. The elven king turned around. Chairman, I think as the Elven Council's chief and a staunch supporter of democracy, you should make a decision. AI, this kind of decision, I don't know if it's right or wrong. Augusta's face twitched a few times, but he still helplessly made a decision in the end. He understood that the ancient tree of life could give the elves a stronger power, but it could also create a strong enemy for the elves, causing the eternal forest to be embroiled in an unprecedented battle. The elves were naturally kind and didn't like killing. Was this right or wrong? Was this a blessing or a curse? First save the ancient tree of life. We'll discuss other matters later. All right, it's decided. After the chairman agreed, this matter was easy to handle. The Elven Council announced the news, and the eternal forest was shaken once again. Each elf returned home and took out the longbows and swords they hadn't used in many years. They all aggressively left the forest to save Miracle City. What kind of nonsense is this? Augusta saw that the elves were messy and shouting. It was destroying the elegance and civilization of a race. Although the eternal forest's elves are very strong, Miracle City is too far from here. We won't be able to make it in time if we move like this. The Elven King thought about it. Go call Vivian over. Vivian had been under house arrest for several days, and her haze had been swept away. Her brows were raised, and her face was filled with joy. She came over in high spirits. Royal Father, do you see this? Big Brother Chu Tian did it. He really did it. He is the great benefactor of the elves. I said that he would have a way. Let's not talk about this for now. The Elven King shook his head. Miracle City is in danger. We have to go save them. Do you have more Miracle City scrolls? Vivian knit her brows. This scroll is made from an Eye of the Star fragment. There aren't many left in Miracle City. I only brought this one. Only one? I have a way. Vivian took out an Eye of the Star from her storage pocket. Although I don't know how to make a transport scroll, I can make a transport tower. This Eye of the Star was a cultivation technique that Big Brother Chu Tian left for me. Now, we can make a transport tower in the Eternal Forest, and everyone can directly go to Miracle City. How long do you need? At least 3 days. No, 3 days is too long. The Elven King held Vivian's transport scroll in his hand. If it's like this, I'll go first. Vivian's eyes lit up. Royal Father is personally going to Miracle City? That's great. With Royal Father personally making a move, there's nothing to fear from those shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Augusta was a bit worried. Your Majesty is the highest leader of the elves and the ruler of the Eternal Forest. If you personally get involved, perhaps it will alarm Dragon City, Titan City, and Beast King City. The elves are not prepared to directly clash with them. The eternal forest hadn't participated in a battle in thousands of years. There had to be a gradual process of adaptation. If we have to fight sooner or later, there is no need to be afraid. Sir Speaker doesn't need to worry. The Elven King gently flicked his finger, and the scroll automatically opened, releasing spatial energy. Vivian, I'll leave the matter of building the transport tower to you. Please be assured, Royal Father. It was unknown how happy Vivian was in her heart. Today's matter was a milestone for the elves, and what made Vivian very happy was that she could build a transport tower in the eternal forest without needing the permission of elder sister Meng Qingwu and big brother Chu Tian. After all, this matter happened suddenly. Vivian also had her own selfish motives. She hoped that the eternal forest would become better and better. The construction of this transport tower was enough to have an immeasurable influence on the eternal forest. The eternal forest and Miracle City were destined to be closely connected. Chapter 988. Nidhogg. There weren't many people in the forest who knew this name, because people were used to calling him the Dragon Lord or Deathwing. No one knew how long Deathwing had lived for. With a lifespan of several tens of thousands of years, he should have just reached middle age among the giant dragons. Deathwing, who was at least 20,000 years old, could be considered one of the oldest beings in the Forest of Chaos. Deathwing occupied the Dragon's Ridge. It was said that Dragon City was a city made of treasures, and the treasures there could be piled up into the sky. The dragons all had a strong hobby of collecting, and Deathwing Nidhogg was one of the best. He had an almost infinite lifespan and a strength that could look down on all living beings, giving him enough time to plunder and collect treasures. There was no doubt. Deathwing Nidhogg was the most famous collector in the Forest of Chaos. Other than that, Deathwing was the richest person in the Forest of Chaos. This Dragon Lord was a pure, bloodline black dragon, specializing in dark and death energy. Therefore, the people he gathered were mostly evil people. There were quite a few dark races recruited from underground, like the Dark Elves, the Dark Spirit Beasts, the Demons, and etc. There were even quite a few liches working for him. His influence was very strong, covering the sky with one hand. A single sneeze from him could cause a riot in the Forest of Chaos. Too strong. This pressure was too strong. Deathwing's strength was clearly on the same level as the Elven King. But the Elven King gave people a feeling like he didn't have any strength, while Deathwing's pressure was released to the peak. This was not a normal pressure. It was a dragon's might, the might of a giant dragon. This was the might of a peak life form against a low life form. It was like an overlord at the top of the food chain looking down at a pitiful little ant. When this pressure hit Miracle City, there were some weak people with weak wills that fainted on the spot. The others were trembling, and they couldn't even stand straight. Meng Qingwu and the others all had pale faces. This was the power of a giant dragon. It was not something a mortal could resist. Deathwing did not come alone. He had several dragons with him. These dragons were dragons with a slightly lower bloodline, but they were still terrifying existences that would not lose to the Eternal Forest Elven Counselors. On the back of each dragon, there were a few liches, ghouls, and dark elves. So, even if there was a difference in strength, it wasn't too big. Lancelot, I guess you'd be here. Deathwing's giant figure released a black light, and countless profound runes appeared around him. After 4 or 5 seconds, the light quickly dimmed and shrank. In just a few seconds, the wingspan of over 100 meters began to shrink rapidly, turning into a humanoid form that was only about 3 meters tall. Of course, this was not a human. Deathwing's strong body was still covered in dragon scales. That pair of majestic dragon wings spread open on his back, and the white bone spikes on their ends were like bone spears. His eyes were dark gold, and his pupils were reptilian, long and cold. Although his body was small, his might did not decrease at all. The Elven King released a gentle and natural aura that instantly counteracted Deathwing's killing intent, letting everyone here let out a sigh of relief. We haven't seen each other in 80 years. Do you really have to release your killing intent as soon as we meet? Let's sit down and have a good chat. Death Wing's dragon wings trembled. What's the rush? Not everyone is here yet. The Elven King was a bit stunned and immediately felt something. Although he couldn't see it with the naked eye, the Elven King could see everything within 100 miles with a force scepter. At this time, two groups of figures the size of small mountains were approaching Miracle City at the same time. Dong, dong, dong. The heavens and earth shook. All living beings were bowing down. This was like a scene of a deity descending. A vast pressure swept in all directions, and with the trembling of an earthquake, 15 giants appeared in their field of view. If they didn't personally see it, no one would believe that there would be such tall people in this world. Each giant was around 100 meters tall, and a human standing in front of them looked like a toe. Each giant's skin had a metallic luster, giving people a feeling of being invulnerable. At the same time, each giant's body was covered in large amounts of lightning runes. There were no pupils in their eye sockets, only burning flames of thunder. Titan. This was the Titan race. The Titan race was the highest class of giants. There weren't many of them left on the continent. They were existences that were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. The Titan's body contained the terrifying power of heavenly thunder. Therefore, it had a destructive power that even gods and ghosts couldn't block. It was a terrifying race that made everyone tremble in fear. In another direction, several incomparably large figures were moving about. These figures were a bit smaller than the Titans, but they were much thicker. They looked like giant apes, but they had terrifying fangs and claws. Their large, bloody mouths could easily swallow 3-5 bulls at once. Wherever these gigantic beasts passed by, there was a violent, murderous aura and all sorts of unparalleled ferocious beasts' auras. It was enough to make any living creature retreat. Behemoth. This was the Behemoth race. The Behemoth race was also a very ancient race. The Behemoth's reproductive abilities were very poor, so they were very few in number. Moreover, the Behemoth race had a very interesting characteristic. Out of every 100 behemoths born, 99 of them would be called behemoth giant beasts. What was a giant beast? They only had strength, but their minds were simple. These behemoth giant beasts were very terrifying. They could be called natural war machines. Moreover, they had an incomparably cruel personality, being filled with a natural desire for destruction and slaughter. Out of every 100 behemoths born, there would only be one intelligent behemoth. This behemoth was the natural-born king of beasts, the king of spirit beasts. It was a natural-born leader. The people from the savage highlands and the giant mountain range are here. Chu Tian slightly knit his brows when he saw this. This matter is becoming more and more lively. The Titans and Behemoths were outside Miracle City. Two figures charged into Miracle City. One was a man around the same height as a dwarf, and the other was a miniature behemoth that had shrunk several dozen times. The auras coming from these two people were not inferior to the Elven Kings. They should have used a secret technique similar to Death Wings to shrink their bodies. Great Titan, Thunder, Fury Sylvester, Golden Behemoth, Burst Claw, Nukazin. These two people were also legendary characters. One was the highest leader of the giant mountain range, and the other was the king of beasts in the savage highlands. Adding in the Dragon Lord's master and the Eternal Forest King. The foremost influential people in the Forest of Chaos were all here. This was definitely a scene rarely seen in 100 years. The Elven Council Speaker Augusta walked beside the Elven King and coldly looked at these fellows. What are you doing here? Even though Renew had become as short as a dwarf, his aura was still intimidating. He looked at Augusta and said in a slightly mocking tone, "You're still alive, old elf? It really isn't easy." Augusta's face sunk. Thunder Fury, you better be more polite with your words. Whether it was the Titan Thunder Fury, the Behemoth Burst Claw, or the Dragon Lord Death Wing, they were all existences with incomparably long lifespans. Even the elves in front of them had already changed several times. Of course, having a long lifespan had its advantages, and having a short lifespan had its advantages. The elves had the most experts, and the Elven King Lancelot was not inferior to these three. Other than that, The elven speaker Augusta was also an expert on the same level. The highest elven leaders of the forests, under the control of the elves, were only experts that were a level above them. The laws of the continent were fair. Long lifespans, weak reproduction, slow growth, and strong individual strength. Short lifespans, fast reproduction, and fast growth, group strength could not be ignored. The reason why the humans could quickly rise on the continent was because of this. Burst Claw said in a deep and heavy voice, "Lancelot, you're not going to give me an explanation for killing my people." The Elven King revealed a faint smile. "I gave him a chance. It was him who didn't cherish it." Burst Claw's eyes were filled with a red light, and a cruel killing intent appeared. It said that the Eternal Forest's current Elven King is even more elegant than the previous one. "You've only been on the throne for 100 years and haven't fought yet. How about we take this chance to compete?" The two of them were peak experts of the forest. If they fought in Miracle City, the situation wouldn't be good. "I have no objections if you want to compete." Deathwing seemed like he had no interest in fighting with these people, but my time is precious, so I'll go straight to the main topic. I can smell the ancient tree of life scent, and with such a good thing appearing, aren't the elves prepared to let us see it? Thunder flashed around. Thunder knew when he heard this. This is the common treasure of the entire forest. The elves wouldn't want to take it all for themselves, right? The behemoth Burst Claw's killing intent disappeared, and he revealed a look of fear. If the Eternal Forest obtained the story of life, the Eternal Forest's influence would greatly increase. Although the Eternal Forest didn't like fighting, who would like a superpower hiding in their territory? An ancient item is a heaven-defying item. This kind of ominous thing should be destroyed. The ancient tree of life was undoubtedly a good thing. But whether it was the Dragon's Ridge, the Giant's Mountain Range, or the Savage Highlands, they all didn't want this thing to fall into the Eternal Forest's hands. Even if they couldn't obtain it, they had to destroy it. The elves revealed looks of high vigilance. Augusta coldly said, "If you have the ability, then come and take it yourselves." 3 against 2? The elf chances of winning were not high. The entire Elven Council was here, and there were several dozen experts from the Eternal Forest. They had the power of the ancient tree of life behind them, so if they fought to the death, they might have a chance of winning. Under the leadership of the 4 forest giants, there were several dozen wyverns, several dozen titans, several dozen behemoths, and over 100 elven experts. If they fought, would Miracle City still exist? When swords were drawn on all sides, an insignificant voice came from his side. "Can I say a few words?" Chapter 989. The heaven and earth phenomenon brought by the ancient tree of life made the joint army pause for a moment, but under Cow's strong orders, the army quickly resumed their offensive. Miracle City's situation was instantly filled with danger. The Spider Ray soldiers have already dug a path to Miracle City and are now directly attacking Miracle City. The Wings Ray soldiers have already crossed the defensive line and are suppressing Miracle City from the air. The Green Giants and Orc Cavalry are quickly infiltrating. Miracle City's defenses are already collapsing. This news filled Cow's mind with excitement. Even if Miracle City had risen in the last month or two, their foundation was still a bit lacking. No matter how they struggled, they couldn't block the combined attacks of the elites of the 4 cities. There was no chance of losing this battle. It was just a matter of time. Many of the mountains around Miracle City had been lost, and the source energy weapons had been damaged, so they couldn't form an effective defense. The Spider Race came out from all over Miracle City, launching a sneak attack from inside Miracle City. The Wings Race came and went like the wind. With their powerful aerial superiority and flexibility, they were currently disrupting the Miracle City Army's formation, making the Miracle City Army lose sight of one thing. So there were more and more holes in their defenses. Finally, the Green Giant soldiers and Orc Cavalry also charged in. The Green Giant's powerful physique could block light source energy weapons, and the Orc Cavalry's mobility and destructive might were like a sharp knife cutting through the defensive line. Miracle City's heavy weapons had completely lost their defensive advantage, so they could only fight in close range. The barbarian berserkers led the new recruits to block the green giants and orc cavalry, while the gnomes used bows and various spells to block the wings race's attacks from the sky. The warriors of the large tribes couldn't get involved in this kind of battle between city armies. They were responsible for blocking the gaps and blocking the warriors of Kao's army. Although the cannons and other heavy weapons couldn't be used in this chaotic battle, Miracle City still had over 100,000 source energy firearms. This could make up for the lack of battle power to a certain degree, temporarily blocking the attacks of the Four Cities army. Kao looked at Miracle City fighting. Let's do it. When Kao, Kino, and several dozen Battle Banner City True Spirit Realm experts charged into Miracle City, a small berserker team discovered them and immediately raised their storm rifles to shoot. These densely packed source energy bullets were very strong. Even if a True Spirit Realm expert was hit by several storm rifles without any defenses, they would still be injured. Seeking death. Kao waved his hand, and the berserkers seemed to become weightless as they floated into the air. Every one of them was coiled by several snakes and flood dragons. Their heads and limbs were pulled in 5 different directions at the same time, pulling them out of their bodies and killing them on the spot. Although the storm rifles weren't weak, it wasn't easy to kill a spirit transformation expert. Kao grabbed the neck of a barbarian berserker through the air and lifted him off the ground. "Where's your city, Lord? Speak." The berserker went berserk, not knowing what fear was. Therefore, he didn't hesitate even if his life was hanging by a thread. He raised the source energy cannon in his left hand and shot it at Kao. Pung! The source energy cannon hit Kao's protective spirit energy, and it actually made him slightly stagger. Kao was filled with rage as he directly punched the barbarian berserker into pieces. "Search," Kino said to the people behind him. "Even if we have to turn Miracle City upside down, we have to find that person." All of these people possessed shocking strength, and everywhere they passed, they were clean and efficient as if they were crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, causing all those who resisted to be beaten to the point of fleeing like rats. There's news. They're all in the garden in the center of Miracle City. Ha ha ha. The heavens are helping me. Kao's eyes turned red as he laughed. He led several dozen people and immediately moved. "Let's go." Kao began a slaughter on the way. Miracle City was in chaos, with the spider warriors attacking from the inside and the winged race suppressing the sky. There were large amounts of green giants, orcs, and forest tribe warriors that attacked Miracle City from all directions. Kao's group was too small, so they couldn't encircle them. A small group couldn't stop them, so these people easily killed their way into the Miracle Gardens. The Miracle Gardens were filled with Miracle Commerce's sacred herbs. It was simply a giant treasure house. Even if these experts saw this scene, they couldn't help feeling shocked. They never thought Miracle City would actually be this rich. Although there were many resources in the Forest of Chaos, who didn't want to transplant these treasures so they could use them whenever they wanted. Although these heaven and earth treasures wouldn't rot like normal materials, once they were picked, they would quickly lose their vitality. This would cause the medicinal effects to weaken, and finally their value would be greatly reduced. Was transplanting something easy? This kind of precious material was very harsh on its growing environment. Transplanting every saint herb not only required high-level cultivation techniques, but it also required enough fertile soil and a special environment as the foundation. At the very least, it was impossible to find such a large medicinal field in Battle Banner City. These heaven and earth treasures were very eye-catching, but what shocked Kao the most was not them. When Kao and the others looked at the center, they saw a small sapling that was around 3 feet tall. This sapling didn't look special at first glance, but the sapling was covered in a pure green divine light. The entire garden was covered in this aura and power. It looked like it was 3 feet tall, but in fact, it gave off the feeling of a baby. It should have just been born. Every leaf was bright green, like the best gemstones and jadeite. If the patterns on the leaves were magnified thousands of times, one would see that they were all densely packed innate runes, and every single one of them contained the vitality of heaven and earth. Divine object. A divine object. Although Cal and the others didn't know where this thing came from, they didn't need to use their brains to feel that this little sapling had already surpassed the immortal grade realm. It was definitely a legendary divine object that couldn't be found on the continent, and it wasn't even a normal divine object. The burning red eyes of the dozen people couldn't move away. Was the heaven and earth phenomenon that occurred in Miracle City brought by this divine tree? The divine tree stood there. Although the entire garden was filled with treasures, it was dim and had no attraction at all. What was the origin of this divine tree? No matter where it came from, it wasn't important. Perhaps all the things in the garden added together couldn't compare to this divine tree's value. If they could get their hands on it, even if they couldn't use it, as long as they offered it to the Beast King, they wouldn't need to worry about obtaining large benefits. Aya, this is bad. There's bad people coming. The flower fairies successfully grew the ancient tree of life, but they didn't even have time to be happy before they felt a killing intent and greedy aura. Although they were exhausted, they still quickly protected the tree of life. Perhaps there wouldn't be a second tree of life in this world. They had to protect the tree of life no matter what. Chu Tian, Meng Qing Wu, Meng Yingying, and Nan Gong Yun, although the four of them looked a bit tired, they were in an unprecedentedly good state. Because they had absorbed the aura of the tree of life, their cultivations had clearly increased. Chu Tian had reached the peak second awakened soul layer. The Meng sisters had broken through to the second awakened soul layer, and Nan Gong Yun had reached the peak third awakened soul layer. This was after they sealed their meridians, not absorbing the energy of the tree of life. City Lord Cao saw Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu in the distance. The clothes they were wearing were clearly the City Lord's robes, and the expression on his face became even more fanatical. This truly is an unexpected harvest. Meng Yingying clenched her fists and shouted, "Humph, don't think that we're afraid of you. Do you see this tree? It is the ancient tree of life, comparable to an ancient spiritual god. Once it releases its might, you little shrimps will be turned to dust in minutes." Although she was bluffing and had a fierce appearance, Meng Yingying's threat was like a little white rabbit showing its claws to a big bad wolf. So it's the ancient tree of life? The ancient tree of life is not a killing object. City Lord Cao gave a sinister smile, not to mention how much power a newly born ancient tree of life can produce. While they were talking, City Lord Cao's body released a red-hot spirit energy that was like a flood dragon coiling around his body. There was no doubt his 8th true spirit layer cultivation, and when that strong pressure came, it made it hard for people to breathe. Too strong. Even if the people here worked together, it would be hard to block a single attack. When Miracle City was still Green City, there were several spirit transformation experts. For example, the dead green religion bishop, the undead religion lich, and the druid prophet Yoda. Yoda couldn't return from the Great Zhou dynasty. There was no one in Miracle City who could fight. Chu Tian quickly raised his hand and said, "Wait, perhaps we can talk." "Stall for time?" City Lord Cao said with a cold smile. "This is meaningless. Miracle City is doomed to fall. Even if the Eternal Forest sends reinforcements, they won't make it in time. If you cripple your own cultivation and follow this City Lord, I can guarantee you a lifetime of wealth." Chu Tian shrugged. "You really don't know how to negotiate. This is not a negotiation." Cao gave a low roar and released all his strength. He didn't like wasting time. He would first cripple these people. But this time, with a thought from Chu Tian, the 18 divine servants hiding nearby suddenly charged at Cao at the same time. Cao was a bit stunned, but this kind of sneak attack had no value. Kino and the other experts weren't just decorations. Almost in an instant, the divine servants were sent flying like broken puppets. Cao's body was surrounded by a powerful energy, and he instantly broke through the sound barrier, charging forward at a speed surpassing the speed of sound. The Meng sisters and Nan Gong Yun's expressions all changed. "This is bad." At this moment, Chu Tian's eyes narrowed. "You really think you can eat me?" Chapter 990. This voice came too suddenly. Whether it was Burst Claw Thunder Fury or Death Wing, they had never placed any creature other than the elves in their eyes. Humans did not have any influence in the Forest of Chaos, so they were considered outsiders. Not to mention that these humans were so weak. When the large characters were in a fierce confrontation, a bug suddenly appeared beside them. What would happen to this bug in the end? It would be trampled to death. What qualifications does an ant have to speak? Die. A violent claw light burst out, setting off a scarlet tornado that was several meters tall. The ground was torn apart like paper as it flew towards Chu Tian with a destructive force. This was just a casual attack from Burst Claw, but its might was not something Chu Tian could block with his strength. Killing a human like this wasn't much different from killing a bug to Burst Claw. Burst Claw, your temper is still this big. Lancelot waved his forest scepter, and from the ground around Chu Tian, countless wooden vines came out. Each vine was as thick as a finger and looked weak, but it released an unbelievable strength and speed. It slammed into the claw glow like lightning, and the entire tornado was instantly shattered. This time, Burst Claw and Thunder's fury revealed looks of dread. The current Elven King had only been on the throne for 100 years, and because the Eternal Forest didn't participate in any battles, Lancelot had never fought with any of the other large characters. So no one knew how strong the Elven King was. The Forest Scepter was one of the treasures of the Eternal Forest, and its might was inseparable from the strength of the wielder. The Elven King did not use any of his strength at all, and used the power of the Forest Scepter to resolve Burst Claw's attack. He did not reveal himself, but it was enough to show that the Elven King's cultivation was not low. The most important thing was that the Forest Scepter was refined from a branch of the ancient Tree of Life. Now that it was covered by the ancient Tree of Life's power, the Forest Scepter's power would increase by a large amount. The Elven King could fight against a peak forest expert with just the power of the Forest Scepter. If he added in his own strength, it was not impossible for him to fight one against two. Adding an Augusta like this, they would not suffer a large loss in a direct clash. The Elven King did not care about Burst Claw's fierce expression, and his eyes fell on Chu Tian. What do you want to say? Many thanks, Your Majesty, the Elven King. Chu Tian's expression did not change from beginning to end as he walked in between the four giants. Whether it was the high above dragon's might, the overbearing Titan, or the terrifying behemoth, he was completely fine, as if this pressure did not exist at all. A few of the big shots were astonished. This human, who wasn't particularly strong, was actually able to remain calm in the face of such pressure. This was no longer a matter of courage or mental fortitude. Whether it was the Elven King, the behemoth, the Titan, or the giant dragon, they were all existences that far surpass humans. This kind of pressure did not come from the difference in strength, but rather from the very essence of their souls. A little lamb might dare to provoke a strong water buffalo, but even the bravest lamb, if it was placed in front of a group of tigers and lions, the kind of fear that was deeply rooted in its soul was not something that could be overcome with courage. Not to mention the titans, behemoths, and giant dragons. In front of these ancient and tyrannical beings, humans could not even be considered lambs. This was the high-level beings looking down on the low-level beings. Chu Tian was able to remain calm under this kind of gaze. How could people not be shocked? This meant that no matter how strong this human was, at least in his heart and in his soul, there was an expert that dared to challenge the giant dragon. Thunder's fury had a new level of respect for this human. Who are you? The master of this land, Miracle City's city, Lord Chu Tian. Chu Tian. Deathwing's long and cold, dark golden eyes stared at him, just like a poisonous snake staring at a frog. Although it was calm, it released a chill that made people's hairs stand on end. So you're saying that my subordinates were killed by you? Are you talking about that lich? No. Respected Dragon Lord, you must be mistaken. Chu Tian was not shocked by the aura released by the black dragon at all. He said with a relaxed expression, not only is he not dead, he's alive and well, but he has already jumped ship. Ling, your old leader is here. Aren't you going to greet him? Deathwing was stunned. Respected Dragon Lord, Dragon City Lord, Your Majesty Deathwing. A cold voice without any emotions came from the speaker in the corner. Sir City Lord has given me a new life, and I'm living very well now. I ask Your Majesty Deathwing to not worry about me. Deathwing's expression changed, and he immediately looked around. Where are you? Zero is Miracle City's manager. His ears can cover Miracle City, and his eyes can cover Miracle City. So he is everywhere. Chu Tian knew that explaining this problem to Deathwing was troublesome. In a certain sense, Zero's existence is already close to a spiritual god. A good human with a mouth full of nonsense. Burst Claw took a step forward. The Wild Shaman Religion's Green City branch. It seems like it was also destroyed by you. Chu Tian looked at him and shook his head as he said, Powerful 10,000 Beast King, I did not destroy the Shaman religion. On the contrary, I made them flourish. A small Green City Shaman branch has already jumped out of the forest and established their influence in the distant Warhound's plains. Just based on this point, wouldn't the Savage Highlands headquarters find it hard to do? So, I did not destroy any Shaman branch, and on the contrary, I promoted the Shaman religion's development. The Shamans developed in the Warhound's plains? Who would believe this if he said it? Your eyes are too short. Chu Tian's bluntness made everyone break out in a cold sweat. Daring to accuse these large characters of being short-sighted, only Chu Tian dared to do this in the entire forest. You're limiting the competition for benefits to the small forest of chaos. Could it be that the continent only has this small forest? With your strength and my technology, how hard would it be to become an overlord of the continent in the future? These words were too excessive. Even the forest of chaos had many places that had not been developed yet. Chu Tian said, The ancient tree of life cannot be moved and Miracle City cannot be seeded. This is an iron principle that no one can change. Of course, with your strength, it is enough to easily take Miracle City. But have you ever thought that if you do this, the forest of chaos will be filled with an unprecedented chaotic battle? The ancient tree of life's value lies in creating life. Could it be that you want to watch it become a fuse for death and war? Augusta objected. The ancient tree of life belongs to the elves. You want to take the elves' divine object. Why do you need to use these high-sounding excuses? You're wrong. Chu Tian announced in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Miracle City has no intention of becoming enemies with any power. For the stability of Miracle City and for the lives of millions, Miracle City has its value. As long as everyone takes a step back, with Miracle City as the center, we can create a special region in the center of the forest of chaos. Whether it is Miracle Commerce's technology or the ancient tree of life's power, it will all benefit everyone. At that time, not only will the Eternal Forest obtain large benefits, the Dragon's Ridge, the Giant's Mountain Range, and the Savage Highlands will also change. If the Dragon Lord is willing to cooperate with Miracle Commerce, with Miracle Commerce's channels, you can earn money from the entire continent. Wouldn't the Dragon Lord's wealth be more than 10 times what it is now? If the Titans cooperate with Miracle Commerce, the Titans craftsmen will need any material. Even if it's the stars in the sky, they can be plucked for you, and the giants can build magnificent palaces. At that time, wouldn't the giants obtain more than 10 times what they are now? If the Savage Highlands cooperate with Miracle Commerce, we will sell you the continent's strongest and most advanced weapons. It will allow your army to kill their way out of the forest of chaos, sweeping in all directions and sweeping through everything. At that time, wouldn't you obtain more than 10 times what you have now? Although the forest of chaos communication was blocked, these giants all had eyes and ears. With the recent matters of Miracle City, it was impossible for them not to know about Miracle City's technology, at least a part of it. If Chu Tian was given enough time, Chu Tian had the ability to do this. However, would these big shots agree to it? If they built a special region in the center of the forest with Miracle City as the center, wouldn't that be supporting a fifth power outside of the four great powers? If they waited until Miracle City expanded, what would they do if they smashed their own feet with a rock? I support the proposal to build a special region. The Elven King was the first to speak. Miracle City is related to a large conflict of interest. How about everyone take a step back? The elves are willing to become Miracle City's most reliable ally. Augusta was dissatisfied with this decision. Why did the elves have to lower their heads to a human? No matter how strong Chu Tion's potential was, he still hadn't matured. Deathwing, Thundernew, and Burst Claw were even more dissatisfied with this. Miracle City had a close relationship with the Eternal Forest, and one of Miracle City's Vice-City lords was someone from the Eternal Forest. If they acknowledged Miracle City's independent status and allowed Chu Tion's group to continue raising the ancient tree of life, wouldn't the Eternal Forest benefit the most in the end? I agree with Chu Tion's proposal. When the three large characters didn't say anything, a deep voice came from the ground. Cenarius. The large characters were all shocked because hundreds of Trants had appeared around Miracle City at an unknown time. The one leading them was over 100 meters tall. It was the Trant Patriarch Cenarius who had the title of Forest Protector. Chu Tion saw Cenarius appear, and he let out a long sigh of relief. "You're finally here." Cenarius slowly and firmly stepped forward. The Trants are willing to die to protect the ancient tree of life. Anyone that tries to harm or destroy the ancient tree of life will become the eternal enemy of the Trants. I agree with City Lord Chu Tion's proposal. The Trants will move to Miracle City and form a defensive line for Miracle City. Chapter 991. Meng Qingwu knit her brows. Did Chu Tion use his main source spirit again? Although this source spirit could increase Chu Tion's strength, there was a large risk in using this source spirit. Unless it was a last resort, Chu Tion would not easily reveal his strength. Cao's hands reached out. Several dozen energy chains hit Chu Tion's body like beams of light. This attack was strong enough to destroy a normal spirit transformation cultivator's protective spirit energy. Even if Meng Yingying and Nangongyan were outside of the attack range, they could still feel the strong destructive power of the attack. Be careful. The two of them wanted to warn him, but they didn't even have the chance to open their mouths. Several dozen attacks fell onto Chu Tion's body. Cao did not want to kill Chu Tion, so he did not directly attack him. When the several dozen energy chains were about to hit Chu Tion's body, they all exploded and turned into millions of thin threads. Each thread was like a steel needle that pierced into different acupuncture points and meridians on Chu Tion's body. "You want to destroy my meridians?" Chu Tion gave a cold laugh, and his eyes turned black. It was not a normal black, but rather a deep black, just like a black hole. When the thin threads of energy entered his body, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no sound at all. Cao slightly knit his brows and released another energy chain. This time it directly hit Chu Tion's body. Although a part of the energy was swallowed, Cao's strength was too strong and most of it hit Chu Tion's body, but it was bounced off by the starlight around Chu Tion's body. Chu Tion did not even stop as he charged in front of him. The long sword turned into a black streak as it slashed out. Several hundred energy chains appeared around Cao's body, easily bouncing off the sword filled with destructive power. His palm slammed into Chu Tion's chest at the same time. The starlight protecting Chu Tion's body was finally shattered, and he was instantly sent flying several dozen feet away. He was sent flying by Cao's energy chains in midair before finally falling to the ground, creating a large hole in the ground. Chu Tion was only in the peak 2nd True Spirit layer, and Cao was an expert in the 8th True Spirit layer. The two of them were separated by 3 stages of full 6 layers of cultivation. This was not a gap that could be measured by any cultivation technique or skill. What made people dumbfounded was that Chu Tion was forced back after exchanging several moves with Cao. Chu Tion flipped over and jumped up. At least 7 to 8 of his ribs were broken, and his internal organs were not small injuries. His eyes turned green, and an overflowing vitality flowed through his body, quickly healing his injuries. This source spirit is... Cao was in a bit of disbelief. Chu Tian had at least 8-9 different attributes, and each one was very strong. What he was using right now was life energy. Chu Tian's ability resonated with the ancient tree of life, and the surrounding life energy was drawn in, gathering at an incredible speed. It allowed Chu Tian to miraculously recover in the blink of an eye, not leaving a single mark behind. Chu Tian relied on the innate life energy of his main source spirit and the life energy of the ancient tree of life. As long as he had a single breath, he could quickly recover. You really do have some unexpected methods. City Lord Cao was not a normal person. He suppressed the shock in his heart and released his strength, turning into hundreds of intertwining energy chains. It's a pity I only want an obedient dog, and not a dog that can turn into a hungry wolf at any moment. Fast, too fast. City Lord Cao gathered the energy chains and wrapped them around his right arm. Then he broke through the sound barrier and turned into shadows that surpassed the speed of sound as he charged forward. The mind's lamp divine sense was released. Chu Tian's eyes unknowingly turned golden. His divine sense was not weak, and after being strengthened by his source spirit, it became several times stronger. His divine sense turned into countless spiritual thorns. Spiritual attacks ignored distance. Therefore, this kind of attack was instantly released. As soon as City Lord Cao was prepared to attack, he felt several dozen thorns stabbing into his brain, causing intense pain. His speed also slowed down. At this time, Chu Tian's golden eyes released another intense glow, endless purgatory. The sky and earth suddenly collapsed, and his entire person fell into a bottomless abyss. The power condensed from his spirit covered all of his senses and finally constructed a pitch-black underwater world of death. Cao felt like he was being dragged into the hundreds of thousands of meters of water. An unbelievable pressure came from all directions. He couldn't breathe and couldn't move. City Lord Cao felt a suffocating pressure. At this time, countless thumb-sized little fish appeared around him. These fellows were like the fiercest piranhas smelling food, wildly charging at City Lord Cao. They bit his blood, ate his flesh, and drank his marrow. Scram! City Lord Cao loudly shouted. An air bubble appeared at the bottom of the water. The terrifying energy turned the wild, bloodthirsty little fish to ashes. But it was no use. City Lord Cao felt the pressure around him increase, and more bloodthirsty piranhas appeared in the darkness. City Lord Cao shattered it once again. After doing this 3 or 4 times, he became extremely tired and could no longer resist. Countless bloodthirsty piranhas charged forward. Cao's flesh was bitten to pieces, and some fish directly entered his stomach, eating his organs without restraint. Even his bones were bitten to pieces, and his marrow was sucked dry. This kind of pain surpassed any torture in the world. Finally, City Lord Cao's body was completely bitten. City Lord Cao's consciousness did not disappear. After enduring the immense pain, he suddenly regained consciousness. But his body mysteriously split into 2, and he was also pressed down on the bottom of the sea, unable to move. The suffocating pressure was twice as much as before, and countless bloodthirsty little fish appeared around the 2 bodies. Spiritual attack. Spiritual attack. City Lord Cao's was very clear. He knew that he had fallen into a spiritual illusion. This kind of attack would not harm the body, but it could directly attack the mind. It was sinister and terrifying, making people tremble and unable to resist. Everything he saw and felt was a fake illusion, but he could not escape it. This pain and torture was fake, but it could destroy a person's mind and will. However, just as the countless bloodthirsty fish were about to charge at him again, the heavy pressure in the surroundings instantly disappeared, and the 2 figures quickly merged into one. The ferocious fish in the surroundings all turned into shadows and disappeared. Cao suddenly returned to the real world. Chu Tian was knocked back several meters by a bolt of lightning, destroying quite a few precious herbs in the process. After Cao recovered, he prepared an attack in his hand, sending Chu Tian flying another 100 meters. Over 100 precious herbs were destroyed in the process. This lightning attack was sent out by Kino. The moment Cao was hit by the spiritual attack, he decisively attacked Chu Tian. Kino was also a spirit transformation realm expert, with a cultivation in the 7th true spirit layer. This was enough to penetrate the starlight immortal body to injure Chu Tian. It was too much of a pity. Endless Purgatory was an incomparably powerful spiritual attack because time flowed faster in the spiritual world than in the material world. Even if a normal expert was hit for an instant, Chu Tian would be able to kill them thousands of times in the illusion, completely shattering their mind and turning them into a madman or vegetable. When he was being chased by the warhounds Kingdom's Malum on the prairies, Chu Tian had used this move. Although the difference in strength was too large, it still made Malum lose his battle strength. The current situation was even more complicated than before. The difference in cultivation between Chu Tian and Cao had already surpassed the difference between him and Malum. Not to mention that Cao's divine sense was not weak, so it was already very difficult for Chu Tian to hit him. Therefore, he couldn't create a large difference in time, causing his attack to be interrupted before it even started. While Chu Tian was flying back, the surrounding life energy wildly surged in, quickly healing his injuries. He flew into the air and steadily fell down, as if he had never been attacked at all. This truly is incredible spiritual energy. City Lord Cao praised, but his eyes were filled with rage. If it wasn't for the fact that Chu Tian was still useful, he would have already killed him. What other moves do you have? Chu Tian's injuries could be healed with the ancient tree of life, but his divine sense couldn't be restored. Chu Tian felt a wave of dizziness. It seemed like he really couldn't do it. If it was just Cao alone, Chu Tian could deal with him with his source spirit. But the problem was that other than Cao, there were several dozen experts here. Big brother Chu Tian, should we help you? Lulu and the flower fairies surrounded him as they sent out essence energy. This essence energy was more effective than any elixir, quickly restoring Chu Tian's consumed spirit energy and divine sense. The flower fairies were truly versatile helpers. Cao had already lost his patience. Capture him alive and kill the rest. The Meng sisters and Nangong Yun's hearts turned cold. They had transport scrolls with Chu Tian, and if they couldn't hold on, they could hide in the Great Summer Country or the Great Zhou Country. But what about these flower fairies? The flower fairies did not have any battle strength. They would definitely be killed by Cao. Move! Cao's aura erupted once again. Meng Qingwu decisively said, Ying, quickly take Lulu and the others and leave this place. Meng Ying did not even have time to move before Cao, Kino, and the others charged over. Chu Tian quickly controlled the recovered 18 divine servants and quickly surrounded them. Overestimating yourself. The 18 divine servants were sent flying like broken dolls again. Chu Tian first blocked Cao's attack, but he was hit by Kino's lightning bolt. With 4 or 5 experts attacking him, he was instantly heavily injured. Don't let him recover. Waste him. Cao gathered his strength in his right arm and punched at Chu Tian's dantian. If this attack hit Chu Tian, it would most likely scatter most of Chu Tian's cultivation. This is bad. This was a very dangerous moment. A green vine drilled out of the ground, and it was like a green python that was as thick as an arm. It quickly and anxiously wrapped around Cao's arm. Cao's cultivation was very profound, not to mention a trivial little vine. Even if it was 10 chains made of refined steel, they wouldn't be able to bind him. But now it was just a small vine that could stop Cao's attack without any effort. Chu Tian seized this chance to use his spatial energy and jumped 100 meters away, returning to the young miss and Ying's side. Nangonyan quickly asked, Boss, are you all right? Relax, I'm very good. Countless strands of life energy entered Chu Tian's body, and all his injuries instantly healed. When his source spirit slowly came back, no need to worry, Miracle City has been defended. What did you say? Chapter 992. The Protector of the Forest, Cenarius. Basically, everyone had forgotten about this large character. Cenarius's individual strength was not weaker than the peak experts of the Forest of Chaos, and the forest power led by Cenarius was a power that could not be ignored in the Forest of Chaos. Only the Trans were few in number, and they didn't move for several hundred years, so there was no need to fight for resources. Therefore, they were even more low-key than the elves and were ignored. Now, they were dragged in. The entire situation was different. The Trans leaned towards the elves. This was a fact that no one could deny. After all, the Wood Elves and the Trans had a large similarity. They both viewed the ancient Tree of Life as a divine object, and it was the power of the ancient Tree of Life that gave birth to their ancestors and gave them their power. With the Elven King as the leader and the strength of the elves and the Trans, if the two sides fought, their chances of victory would decrease by quite a bit. It was very likely that this would become a long battle. This would drag the entire forest into the swamp of war. If the entire forest fell into the swamp of war, the situation could be predicted. The image the eternal forest had built up over the years would have a decisive effect at this time. Imagine, there are two neighbors. One is a ferocious tiger that often invades others, and the other is an elephant that is equally strong but knows its place and does not expand. When the two neighbors fight, the two neighbors will fight each other. Who would you help? You could even guess it with your feet. If the two sides were in a deadlock and couldn't decide a winner, most of the neutral forest cities and tribes would side with the eternal forest. This would suppress the overall strength of the other three sides. First Claw gritted his teeth. Aren't you afraid of the rare Trance going extinct? Every Trant can be sacrificed for the ancient Tree of Life. Cenarius' voice was slow and sluggish, but it was filled with an unshakable determination. If you doubt the Trent's determination, you can give it a try. Cenarius was not joking. Actually, the Trants never joked. The Trants were a very serious race. They didn't have many emotions and were almost inflexible. Not to mention that the relationship between the ancient Tree of Life and the Trants surpassed the Wood Elves. The ancient Tree of Life was the father of the Trants. It was the Trent's god. The atmosphere instantly fell into a deadlock. All right, since the 1,000-year-old Cenarius has appeared, I'll give you face. Deathwing expressed his stance first. I support Miracle City's independence. Since Deathwing said this, how could Burstclaw and Thunder's Fury have any objections? This wasn't because they truly wanted to support Miracle City. It was just a delaying tactic. As long as the ancient Tree of Life wasn't completely controlled by the Eternal Forest, these three powers had nothing to fear. Even if the Trants were strong, they were still limited in numbers. The Wood Elves were the true opponents they had to guard against. Augusta was still not satisfied with this result. In the end, after going around for so long, they still couldn't take back the ancient Tree of Life. Instead, they wanted a small city like Miracle City to become independent. The Elven King Lancelot said before Augusta could, "Since it's like this, the elves will agree." "Your Majesty, this is the best result." The Elven King looked at Augusta. "Sir Speaker doesn't want to see the entire forest of chaos turn into rivers of blood and people die." Indeed, this was the best result. To the three powers, as long as the ancient Tree of Life didn't fall into the Eternal Forest's hands, there was still room for a buffer. To the elves, although the ancient Tree of Life didn't fall into their hands, with a transport tower, how hard would it be for the elves to come to Miracle City? Not to mention that Cenarius was guarding Miracle City and the Trants were close to the elves. This was an opportunity for the elves. If both sides took a step back, the Forest of Chaos would be safe. If both sides fought, both sides would suffer heavy losses and there would be no winners. The Elven King had to consider many things. He hoped to use Miracle City to reform the elves, so having some connections was not troublesome. Rather, it was necessary. Good. Thunder's Fury looked at Cenarius. "Since it's like this, we'll ask Cenarius to be the judge. I believe the Trants won't go back on their word." Cenarius slowly said in a voice filled with power and determination. "With the name of the Forest Protector, the Trants will protect Miracle City's position as a neutral city and support Miracle City's city, Lord Chu Tion's ruling position. Whether it is the elves, dragons, titans, behemoths, or any other race in the forest, if they try to take Miracle City for themselves or use any methods to directly or indirectly control the ancient tree of life or Miracle City, they will be considered enemies of the Treants. The Treants wouldn't go back on their word, not to mention a person like Cenarius. This kind of promise was more effective than any contract. At least it could ensure that Miracle City wouldn't fall into the elves' hands. Because everything happened so suddenly, no one was prepared, so this was the best solution. Lancelot, I hope you can keep your word. Goodbye. Deathwing, Burst Claw, and Thunder's Fury quickly left Miracle City. They knew that they weren't prepared enough, so this promise was just a delaying tactic. As for how to deal with Miracle City and the ancient tree of life, they had to consider it further. The elven counselors all had dark faces. The Miracle City people all had strange expressions on their faces. In the end, the four giants didn't gain any benefits at all, and it was the weak Miracle City that gained the benefits. This change was too much for them to handle. Damn! Finally, Augusta could only pinch his nose and throw it away. We're returning to the Eternal Forest for the meeting. Other than the Elven King, father, and daughter, the other elves all left Miracle City. It really was dangerous. Chu Tian cupped his hands at Cenarius, not feeling the joy of surviving a disaster at all. Rather, he had a mischievous smile as he said, "It's a good thing you appeared in time. Otherwise, Father's city lord position wouldn't be stable. You bringing the ancient tree of life to the world is a historic feat." Cenarius spoke very slowly, but it was able to reach the heart, giving people a peaceful feeling. The Treants will protect the growth of the ancient tree and will also protect the rights you have. Meng Qingwu still didn't believe her own guess. Respected forest protector, may I ask how much power the Treants will send to protect Miracle City? All of them. All of them. The Treants will only follow the agreement and will not accept Miracle City's orders. Although Miracle City couldn't directly order the Treants in the mountains around Miracle City, if there were tens of thousands of Treants stationed, how strong would Miracle City's defenses be? Would this kind of Miracle City still need to worry about being attacked? Unless one of the four great powers came to invade, the matter of them being attacked into the city would never happen again. "Young Miss Ying, what are you standing there for?" Chu Tian called out. "Why aren't you helping our respected Treant friend settle down?" Yes. Cenarius was the strongest Treant. Of course, he was placed in the Miracle Gardens. Not only could he protect the ancient tree of life, he also didn't need to worry about the treasures in the gardens being destroyed. As for the other Treants, they were placed inside and outside Miracle City, especially in the surrounding mountain forest. The Treants could not move for several decades, or even 100 years. But these fellows that didn't move at all became Miracle City's strongest protective umbrella. Adding in Miracle City's life detection radar, whether the enemy was in the sky, on the ground, or underground, they couldn't hide and were instantly killed. The Elven King brought Vivian in front of Miracle City. There won't be any power in the Forest of Chaos that can easily shake your city lord's position. You can rest easy now. Overpraising. I'm just trying to make a living. Royal Father. Vivian looked at the Elven King. You should do it now. What are you in a rush for? The Elven King helplessly shook his head before saying to Chu Tian, Vivian has told me that Miracle City's bank can provide a deposit service. Moreover, the longer the deposit, the higher the interest rate. Vivian quickly added, the elves have quite a few idle source stones, so rather than leaving them in the forest, it's better to store them in Miracle Bank to earn some interest. Although my royal father can't avoid that bad-tempered speaker, it isn't a problem to make some money. Chu Tian instantly understood Vivian's intention. This girl was planning on helping Miracle City solve their financial problems. Not bad. How much do you want to deposit? Chu Tian added, the Elven King is personally depositing it, so naturally I'll give you the highest interest rate. I guarantee you won't suffer a loss. First deposit 150,000 source stones. Vivian made the decision for her father. Deposit it for a year. Chu Tian's eyes lit up. This was a fucking large business. Miracle City's finances were close to collapsing, So 100,000 source stones could be considered a timely rain that could solve this urgent problem. After a year, there will be 50% interest. Chu Tian looked at the Elven King and said, Miracle City's current economic situation isn't good. This is already the limit. A year of 50% interest? The Elven King never thought that Miracle Bank's interest would be this high. Wouldn't 150,000 become 225,000 after a year? The wealth of the outstanding merchants of the continent was only like this. The Elven King didn't do anything at all. He just moved the source stones to another place. Money isn't a problem, and interest isn't a problem. The Elven King revealed a deep smile. I can even put in the bank without interest. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Chu Tian saw Vivian's surprised expression, and he immediately asked in a vigilant voice, What do you want to do? Don't be nervous. The Elven King shook his head and said, I just want to buy a smart brain, that's all. Smart brains knew everything. This fellow knew quite a bit about Miracle City. Chu Tian thought that Miracle Commerce already had 4 or 5 smart brains, so it wouldn't affect Miracle City too much even if they sold one. Now that the 100,000 source stones were coming in, he had to give face to the Elven King. All right, I agree. The Trants were personally protecting the city, and the Elven King had a large amount of money. Good news came one after another. The city's crisis and the financial crisis were solved at the same time. Whether it was the Meng sisters, Nan Gongyan, Dolores, or the entire Miracle City, they were all filled with an unprecedented pleasant surprise. Miracle City was truly blessed after surviving a disaster. Chapter 993. City Lord Cao's cultivation and strength were enough to be ranked among the top experts in the Forest of Chaos. Otherwise, how could he become a city lord? With this kind of strength, he was attacked by the opponent without him noticing at all. From when the other side made their move to when the attack landed, Cao did not notice it at all. In other words, if the other side wanted to take his life, it was very likely they would have succeeded. The other side did not do this, so why was that? He either had no motive to kill Cao, or he felt that killing Cao was as easy as turning his hand. So, this was not a good time for him, and he did not need to waste any effort to grasp it. When everyone looked over, a figure had appeared in the garden at an unknown time. This was a middle-aged elf who looked gentle and refined. His face was impeccably handsome, even among the elves. There was not the slightest energy fluctuation coming from his body. He looked just like an ordinary person. He was wearing a green robe and had a simple crown on his head. There was a long scepter in his right hand, and a silver-white cloak fluttered in the wind behind him. A legendary name appeared in the minds of Chu Tian and the others. The Elven King Lancelot. There were few people in the Eternal Forest that had seen the Elven King's true appearance, so of course Chu Tian and the others had never seen him before. However, from Vivian's description of her father, they could determine that this person was Lancelot. The power the Elven King used just now came from the scepter in his hand. This scepter was called the Forest Scepter, and it was said that it was made from a branch of the ancient tree of life. It had an unfathomable might, and there was not a second person in the Forest of Chaos qualified to use this weapon. The first feeling the Elven King gave people was not that of a king, but rather that of a well-read scholar or a charming wandering poet. City Lord Cao still could not determine the other side's identity, but like a wild beast that smelled danger, the veins on his forehead tightened, making his face look fierce. His pupils slightly shrank, revealing not killing intent, but rather nervousness. It was like a hunter who was fully focused on attacking suddenly had a piece of red-hot charcoal stuffed in his crotch, but he couldn't cry out. The Elven King was like a smooth and calm jade sculpture. His scepter, which was simple and unadorned, was inserted into the ground. Although it did not emit any energy waves, everyone could clearly feel that the entire garden had become the domain of this expert. His power could erupt from anywhere at any time. Retreat, I won't kill you. The Elf King opened his mouth and spoke. There was no sense of threat. Instead, it was more like a sincere plea or consolation to an old friend. City Lord Cao's eyes were focused on Chu Tian, but his divine sense and mind were looking at the Elven King. Chu Tian's group had already become bystanders. The atmosphere suddenly froze in that instant. It was like time could not continue to flow in the garden. There was only one person who recognized the Elven King's identity, and that was Kino behind Cao. Kino was not a person from Battle Banner City and had wandered the Forest of Chaos in his early years. He had interacted with the elves before, so he had some understanding of the Elven King and recognized the legendary life scepter. Kino was covered in a cold sweat, not even daring to take a deep breath. Even the slightest extra movement would bring disaster to himself. The Elven King said he was willing to let them go, and these people were relieved of a heavy burden, although they didn't know why the Elven King would appear here. Since the Elven King had appeared, there was no meaning in fighting here. Just as Kino was thinking about how to tell Cao and make Cao retreat, a voice suddenly rang out. Who would have thought that at this time? Something Kino never thought would happen. Roar! Cao broke through the sound barrier and turned into several figures, charging at Chu Tian's group at the same time. They didn't know who this elf was, but it was most likely related to the Eternal Forest and was most likely here for the Divine Tree. There was no way to obtain the Divine Tree, but at the very least, he had to capture these people. Otherwise, what meaning was there in this battle? How could Cao be willing? When the Elven King saw this, he gently stabbed the forest scepter into the ground a few inches, and a vast power spread through the ground. Countless green vines drilled out, easily lifting Cao, who was flying at supersonic speed, into the air. Several dozen vines shot out. Like piercing through a piece of paper, they instantly pierced through Cao's body. Cao revealed a look of disbelief. If you kill me, His Majesty the Beast King will not let you off. The Elven King gave a soft sigh. Lancelot, will take responsibility for this. Lancelot. When Cao heard this name, his mind turned blank and his eyes popped out like a dead fish. He finally knew why he was completely defeated. So it was the Elven King? Dying in his hands wasn't an injustice. With a tearing sound, the Orc City Lord was torn to pieces. Even someone as strong as Cao, in front of the Elven King, he was no different from a little bug. He couldn't even take a single blow. We didn't know it was His Majesty the Elven King. Kino's head was covered in sweat as he quickly bowed. We'll leave now. We'll retreat now. The Elven King gave a faint nod. It was like they had been granted amnesty as they immediately ran away without even thinking about it. Nangongyan called out in a dissatisfied voice. Could it be we're letting them go like this? Although the other side was the Elven King, Nangongyan was very familiar with Vivian, so she didn't feel any pressure when she saw her father. These fellows made a mess of Miracle City. Wasn't it too easy to let them go like this? Of course. This was already the best result for Miracle City. Although the Elven King was strong, it was impossible for him to fight against 1,000,000 people by himself. Every minute this battle lasted, Miracle City would suffer more damage. The Elven King killing Cao was just a deterrent. After all, with Cao's death, the highest leader of the Four Cities army was gone. If Kino brought the news back, these people would definitely choose to retreat. The Elven King's prestige was really useful. Kino brought the news of Cao's death and ordered the Battle Banner City army to retreat. The various armies all knew of the Elven King's arrival and immediately rushed to join the retreat. The Elven King was one of the strongest people in the Forest of Chaos. His appearance meant that the Eternal Forest was interfering. Who knew how many experts had come from the Eternal Forest, and for them to reach the level of the Eternal Forest, this kind of battle was not something they could endure. Your Majesty Lancelot, I never thought that you would personally come. The Flower Fairies happily surrounded him. The Flower Fairies had a good relationship with the elves, so Lulu and the others had the chance to see the Elven King in their endless lives. The Elven King Lancelot walked in front of the Tree of Life and looked at the 3-foot-tall divine tree with a shocked gaze. This is the ancient Tree of Life? I never thought that it would actually succeed. Your Majesty, this is all Chu Tian's credit, the Flower Fairy Lulu said. If it wasn't for Chu Tian's method of activating the seed, we wouldn't have been able to make it sprout no matter how much effort we put in. The Elven King looked over Chu Tian's group. Meng Qingwu and Meng Yingying were a bit nervous. The Elven King was the ruler of the Eternal Forest, the strongest existence among the elves, and one of the most influential experts in the Forest of Chaos. Even Meng Qingwu found it hard to maintain a calm attitude when facing this kind of person. What you did this time was too risky. If I came a bit later, even if you could escape, the Tree of Life would have met a mishap. The Elven King looked back at the ancient Tree of Life. The matter with this tree has already attracted the attention of many people, so I suggest moving it to the Eternal Forest. This way, it will be easier for the Eternal Forest to irrigate it with the sun's well water, and it will also be protected by the Eternal Forest barrier. Chu Tian shrugged his shoulders and said, "Your Majesty, the Elven King might not know, but once the Tree of Life sprout, its roots will connect to the spirit vein in the surrounding 1,000 miles, becoming one with the earth. Moving it in this kind of situation would be very risky." "That's right, Your Majesty, the Elven King." Lulu and the others immediately came out to testify. Once the ancient Tree of Life is planted, it can't be moved easily. Not to mention that the Tree of Life seed has been sleeping for countless years. Although it has been awakened with great difficulty, it is still in a very weak state. If it is dug out now, it will be killed. If it was just Chu Tian's side of the story, the Elven King would be skeptical. This fellow was very sly. Who knew if he was deceiving them? But now that even the flower fairies said this, he had no choice but to believe it. The flower fairies were the best gardeners on the continent, and the flower fairies were pure and kind. It was impossible for them to deceive the Elven King. The Elven King knit his brows. "This is troublesome. No matter what, many thanks to the Elven King for saving us." Chu Tian cupped his hands to the Elven King. "Only Miracle City is in a mess right now, and we need to clean up the mess, so this one can't receive you." After saying this, Chu Tian did not wait for the Elven King to say anything before leaving with his eyes. Miracle City had experienced the largest calamity since it was built, and it was impossible to estimate the current losses. The damage within the city was still acceptable, but the situation on the outskirts was not optimistic. The native tribes had suffered heavy losses, and many factories had been destroyed. Meng Qingwu did a simple calculation. This battle had caused damage, casualties, losses, and looted resources for Miracle City. These direct losses reached around 100,000 source stones. Other than the direct damage and looted resources, they also had to comfort the injured citizens, provide compensation to the tribes that suffered heavy losses, and also reward the soldiers that killed the enemy. This would greatly increase the already tight financial burden. It's fine if it was just like this. Dolores had a depressed look. Miracle Bank will reduce the interest to the tribes by half and also take care of the repairs. We won't earn anything from this loan and will instead suffer a large loss. Anyone would be depressed if this matter was placed in their hands. Miracle Bank's business model was a stable profit, but that was under normal circumstances. If there was a natural disaster, there was a possibility of losing money. Don't worry, there will be many difficulties in the future, but it will pass. Chu Tian maintained an optimistic attitude. After this battle, Miracle City's reputation will rise, and our future development in the Forest of Chaos will be even smoother. Is that so? I hope it's like this. Miracle City really couldn't take this anymore. Chapter 994. Miracle City's blessing in disguise didn't mean they didn't have to worry. The three powers wouldn't easily compromise, and the elves wouldn't easily give up. In this complicated situation, they could only cooperate with the Elven King to stabilize the elves and also develop Miracle City's military strength. The Treants wouldn't accept any orders. If Miracle City wanted to dominate the forest, they had to have a strong military strength that all the powers feared. Miracle Commerce couldn't train peak experts for now, so they had to develop more advanced weapons. For this, Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu came to the Great Summer Country to understand the situation. The Great Summer's Yun sect's highest leaders, Gu Qinxiu and Yun Tianhe, personally came to greet them. These two old fellows were now true spirit cultivators. so they looked a bit younger than before. Being able to grow this fast at such an old age, one was because of their decades of experience, and the other was because of miracle commerce. Chairman, Vice Chairman, please take a look. This is Miracle Commerce's first automated smart brain factory. The two of them were filled with pride because the factory in front of them had a special meaning to Miracle Commerce. This was Miracle Commerce's first automated and intelligent factory, as well as the first automated factory in the history of the continent. Miracle Commerce had invested a lot of manpower and resources, but the returns were completely worth it. Gu Qinxiu said to Chu Tian as he walked, "We have already created a new generation of manufacturing. From now on, the arrays, talismans, equipment processing, and products won't need any manpower, and these machines will do it for us. From the simple lights and source energy pots to the complex cell phones and even the source energy computers, the core parts can all be placed in the factory for 24-hour automatic production." Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu listened to the introductions as they walked. This factory wasn't too big, but it wasn't small either. With 200 automatic machines working at the same time, its speed and efficiency was several times that of humans. It was equivalent to saving Miracle Commerce a team of 1,000 people. Moreover, they wouldn't make any mistakes, they wouldn't get tired, and they wouldn't stop. They would be working at the highest efficiency every second. As for the 1,000 people who were released, they could save a day of work. Miracle Commerce could put more people into research and development, creating a virtuous cycle. Chu Tian asked, "How long does it take to make a super source energy matrix?" With the smart brain controlling it, the talisman engraving machines can work automatically, increasing the efficiency of the entire factory. It is already not something that humans can compare to. Yin Tina said with pride, "We can make one every day. This is something that we didn't even dare think about before." Making one every day was still too slow, but everything had to be done step by step. Meng Qingwu was very satisfied. Although the smart brain's processing speed is limited, increasing the number of smart brains can make up for the lack of individual abilities. Our space warehouse, transportation system, financial system, weapon equipment, manufacturing, research and development, each industry requires a large number of smart brains to control. Smart brains were truly good things. Before Chu Tian invented this thing, Meng Qingwu would not have been able to experience its benefits. But now she found that she couldn't leave smart brains. Miracle City couldn't rely on 0 and number 2. They needed even more smart brains. This place will be a computer manufacturing factory. We will only make supercomputers and not care about anything else. Chu Tian felt it wasn't enough. Other than that, we need to make faster and more advanced intelligent factories. In half a year, the Great Summer Country will have 10, Ullman Small Town will have 5, and Miracle City will have 20. The two old men couldn't help being speechless. That many. This is the lowest requirement. Meng Qingwu replied for Chu Tian. The manufacturing industry is the support of prosperity. Although Miracle Commerce doesn't have much money, we have accumulated enough resources over the past year, and there are enough gnome scholars, so we don't need to worry about manpower. Our company's resources and manpower allocation are the highest priority, so you can directly report to the production minister Ying. Gu Qinxiu and Yin Tina nodded. Let's look at the weapons. All right, according to the chairman's design, a team of 500 people has been working on it for several months. Adding in the addition of Smart Brain, the research has increased by a large amount. The first generation of close combat energy and defensive weapons have finally been completed. Oh, Chu Tian was a bit surprised. Let's take a look first. Gu Qinxiu took out a black metal sword hilt and a similarly black metal arm guard. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu were the highest leaders of the Yun sect. There was no need to mention Chu Tian. The core technology and ideas of the Yun sect project were all proposed by him. Meng Qingwu was not simple either. Her strong learning and memory allowed her to grasp more technology than any of the Yun sect scholars. This was the energy sword and energy shield. Miracle Commerce had always focused on researching source energy equipment, so it was impossible for the two of them to be unfamiliar with it. Miracle Commerce's source energy weapons were mainly long-range cannons and missiles, lacking in close-range attacks and defense. This energy sword and energy shield was made to make up for these shortcomings. Of course, compared to normal source energy weapons, this equipment was much more technologically advanced. Although Chu Tian had provided the core technology and ideas, it still took several months of research and several tens of thousands of source stones and materials, as well as several tens of thousands of failures before succeeding. The energy sword and energy shield use white energy. Yin Tianhe picked up the sword hilt and activated the array on it. A spider web of light spread out, and with a slight buzzing sound, a bright beam of light shot out from the sword hilt. The light was not dazzling, looking very beautiful, but it also released a strong and dangerous energy fluctuation. The energy of the light sword is several times stronger than the source energy cannons. It can easily cut open a true spirit realm expert's protective spirit energy at close range, so its killing power in close range is quite impressive. Not bad. Chu Tian looked at the arm guard. How about the energy shield? In comparison, Meng Qingwu was more focused on the energy shield technology. The energy sword could only be used in close range, but the energy shield was different. If Miracle Commerce could master the energy shield technology, they could use it in all aspects. Not only could it protect a person, it could also protect the source energy cannons, missile launchers, airships, battleships, and even cities. Yin Tianhe put the arm guard on his left hand and activated the source energy array. Wong. A half arc of energy was released from the groove on the arm guard, covering around 2/3 of his body. The light was condensed like the energy sword and did not scatter, flowing like water. The energy shield also uses white energy. Large amounts of energy particles collide with each other to create a repulsive force, repelling energy and physical attacks. All the energy is one, and every time it receives an attack, it will be weakened by a bit. In a full state, it can block an attack from an Earth Spirit cultivator. Meng Qingwu's eyes lit up. Very strong. If normal soldiers could block an attack from an Earth Spirit cultivator, even if it was just one attack, the battle strength of the army would increase by a large amount. This was too much of a pity. If this weapon was mass-produced earlier, they wouldn't have suffered so many losses in the war. But since the research had succeeded, would it be far from mass production? Chu Tian nodded in satisfaction. Our source energy equipment technology has already matured. Now it's time to create even higher-grade war weapons. Meng Qingwu knit her brows. Even higher-grade war weapons? Chu Tian said, the airships are still too weak. I feel like we have the ability to create even higher-grade energy devices. Moreover, we can use smart brains, radars, guided missiles, source energy cannons, energy shields, and etc. This kind of aircraft is the true overlord of the skies. The moment he said that, everyone was quite frightened. Smart brains, radars, guided missiles, source energy cannons, and even the newest energy shields, adding in a higher-grade energy structure than the airships. This kind of weapon made people's blood run cold just thinking about it. Perhaps just a few of them would be enough to conquer a small country. These individual technologies are all maturing. I don't think it will be a big problem. Meng Qingwu closed her eyes to think for a bit before finally shaking her head and saying, but for this kind of complex war weapon, even if we have smart brains, we still need large amounts of talents, resources, and funds. Miracle Commerce doesn't have enough people to support this project, and our funds will be tight, so I don't think it's time yet. Chu Tian was a bit puzzled. If we take in gnomes, would we still lack talents? Although there are many gnome scholars, they haven't worked in Miracle Commerce before, so they don't understand our technology. They need time to adapt and learn. Not to mention that Miracle Commerce has too many research projects. Even if we have the gnome scholars, we still lack talents in certain fields. Resources and funds were also a problem. This was not something as simple as making an energy sword or an energy shield. Was he too impatient? Chu Tian was thinking of how to solve this problem when Vivian suddenly called him. She excitedly shouted, "The source stones in the eternal forest have already been stored in the warehouse." My royal father and I are in Miracle City. Where are you? Quickly come. Elven King. Chu Tian fell in a deep thought. Lancelot was a rather open king. He was more determined to reform the elves than to bring the ancient tree of life back to the eternal forest. This was because this young elven king was very clear that if the eternal forest obtained the ancient tree of life, they would have to isolate themselves for a long time. Would the elves be able to sit back and relax forever with the ancient tree of life? Impossible. The protection the ancient tree of life gave the elves would only make the elves more isolated. This kind of isolation was very terrifying. The continent's spirit beasts and humans were developing like the sun in the sky, and the former overlords of the elves were gradually being marginalized. If this situation was not changed, the elves would become a weak, small race in 10,000 years. If the Elven King wanted to reform, Miracle City was the key. Then why didn't Miracle City use the Eternal Forest resources? The elves had more high-level talents than the gnomes, and the resources the elves had could be counted on one hand. Chapter 995. Quickly move it. We have many soldiers that are injured and need to be treated. We need to quickly send these medicines over to everyone. How are the canned food preparations going? If there is any stock, send a batch over for the great summer country. We need to ensure the soldiers' food. Several hundred employees followed Meng Yingying's orders and loaded the boxes of supplies onto the airships. After filling up 5 airships, Meng Yingying followed Chu Tian onto one of the airships. They rose up from the warehouse and slowly headed towards the front lines. When they walked in front of the airship's observation window, Meng Yingying could clearly see that the originally beautiful Miracle City was now filled with a foul atmosphere. Large pieces of the mountain had collapsed, and large pieces of the forest had been burned. In just a few short days, Miracle City had become a scene of devastation. War was truly a demon. Miracle City had lost over 40,000 soldiers, and over 70 to 80,000 people were injured, which was less than the attackers. The main reason was that Miracle City had deployed large amounts of source energy weapons to defend, and they had ended the battle at a critical moment when the battle was about to fall into a dangerous situation. If the battle had dragged on for another day, the casualties would have increased by several times. Meng Yingying was a bit sad. Our Miracle City has good mountains and rivers, but now many places have been destroyed beyond recognition. Chu Tian gently hugged her shoulder. Don't be sad. Miracle City has the ancient tree of life. I believe that with the tree of life's power, it is very easy to repair the mountains and forests. Meng Yingying nodded in a gratified manner. Warriors of Miracle City, the enemy has been completely defeated. Miracle City has won. City Lord Chu Tian and the production Minister Meng Yingying have personally come to congratulate everyone, preparing food and medicine for everyone. Everyone can be assured your sacrifice for Miracle City will not be in vain. Every drop of blood you shed for Miracle City will make Miracle City even more prosperous, protecting your future generations. Each brave warrior that fights for Miracle City will forever be remembered by Miracle City. Before the airships landed, there were shouts coming from their loudspeakers. When the citizens and soldiers heard this, they all cheered out. This victory was too incredible. This was the fruit of victory that belonged to every Miracle City member. The 5 airships slowly landed. Under Chu Tian and Meng Yingying's personal command, the boxes of canned food and medicine were brought out and sent into the hands of the citizens and soldiers. There was a call for mobilization from all over the city. Meng Qingguo personally gave a speech, first praising the victory before she sent out a call for mobilization. The surrounding tribes had suffered heavy losses in the battle, so they needed to mobilize everyone in and out of Miracle City to join in the repair work. When the order was given, the entire city responded. Whether it was the gnomes in Miracle City or the people from the surrounding tribes, they all responded. Following this, the 200,000-300,000 people split into small teams, running to different tribes to do the repair work. The entire scene was filled with noise, making people feel a strange feeling in their hearts. This was a kind of warmth that he had never felt before. It was more like a sense of belonging to his home. Miracle City had not just obtained victory this time. It also promoted the unity of the local tribes in Miracle City. The Miracle Broadcasting Station seized this chance to report the situation in the various regions in real time, publicizing the positive and hot-blooded events that happened during the war, promoting the harmonious scene of the tribes and the city united as a family. They even planned to make a related movie. In short, for several hundred years, the tribes in the forest had been in conflict with each other, and the tribes often had conflicts with the city. After this experience of fighting together, it greatly increased the friendship between the tribes and the city. Chu Tian and Ying were busy distributing the supplies. Nangong Yin anxiously rushed over to ask, "Boss, we caught a total of 60,000 captives. What should we do with them?" "This many?" Nangong Yin didn't wait for a reply and first said her own opinion. "I think we should just kill them. Since they are invading other people's homes, they should be prepared to pay the price with their lives. Killing them will raise the morale of Miracle City's people and intimidate these thieves, making it so that the enemies won't dare invade again. This is over 60,000 people." Meng Yingying revealed a look of disbelief. "Kill over 60,000 people? What kind of blood would flow like a river? This method is just too cruel. What else can we do if we don't kill them?" Nangong Yin was an extreme martial artist, but she wasn't a bloodthirsty person. She felt that killing them was wrong, but she couldn't think of a better method. These are all villains that have invaded Miracle City. Many of their hands are dyed with the blood of Miracle City's people. If we let them go like this, it will affect the morale of Miracle City's people. Meng Yingying gave a suggestion, but our Miracle City will need to expand in the future, and we will need to deal with further tribes. If we kill 60,000 people at once, and most of these people are locals, I'm afraid it will arouse their hostility towards Miracle City, which is not good for our company's development in the future. What you say isn't wrong. Nangongyan didn't know what to do. She couldn't kill them and could not kill them. 60,000 mouths had to be eaten. Miracle City's finances were already collapsing. How could they support all these people in the long term? "Boss, you should make the decision. You still need to ask me such a simple question? We can't release them like this. They're our own sins, so of course we have to pay the price." Chu Tian rolled his eyes, "But there's no need to kill them. Go find a young miss and make a list of the prices of the captives. Send the list to the tribes and cities and have them redeem them with money. As for the price, of course the darker the better. What if they don't redeem them? Don't redeem them? Then they can't blame Miracle City. After all, Miracle City gave the captives a chance, but their tribes gave up on this chance. Miracle City is already being extremely benevolent." Chu Tian paused before saying, "If they don't redeem them for a long time, then lock them up as slaves for Miracle City or sell them to slave traders. In short, the ransom or other income will all be used as compensation for the casualties." Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun's eyes lit up. This method was good. Not only did it leave some leeway to not offend these locals, it would create a benevolent image in the forest. It would also give the Miracle City people more compensation, easing Miracle City's financial situation and stabilizing the hearts of the Miracle City people. "Boss is too smart. We'll do it like this." Right now, the entire Miracle City was busy repairing after the battle. Chu Tian was the city lord, so naturally he had to personally reward the citizens and soldiers. Therefore, he brought the production minister Meng Yingying to give out benefits and rewards. Nangong Yun was the city defense and military minister in Miracle City. Her task was to deal with the captives and repair the source energy weapons. Dolores was the minister of commerce and finance, so of course she had to calculate the losses and comfort the tribes. Dongfang Haoran was Miracle City's general, so he had to clean up the army and let Miracle City's army recover their battle strength. Meng Qingwu was in charge of the overall situation, so of course she was the busiest person. He also had to make plans for the post-war repairs. Fortunately, he had the assistance of Intelligent Brain Zero, so this huge amount of work could be completed without the assistance of others. The Elven King was completely forgotten on the side. Of course, the Elven King Lancelot didn't care about these small things. While he was helping the flower fairies cultivate the ancient tree of life in the Miracle Gardens, he was also observing Miracle City's situation. When Lancelot saw that Miracle City had suffered a large disaster, they actually recovered in an orderly manner. There was no chaos during the entire process, which made him very shocked. There were over 10 different races living in Miracle City's area. Not to mention this kind of chaotic time, even in normal situations, it would be very chaotic. The different races in Miracle City all seemed to have a tacit understanding. They all wished for Miracle City to become strong from the bottom of their hearts, which was a very rare sight in the Forest of Chaos. Although Chu Tion's team was a bit immature, they had already displayed outstanding abilities. Finally, Miracle City's pacification work was finished. Chu Tion gathered the high management, Clark, and the various tribe leaders for a meeting, mainly commending everyone for their good performance in the city's crisis. Chu Tion also gave the rights to 100,000 citizens to the various tribes. The various tribes in the Miracle Mountain Ridge were like villages, and Miracle City was like a large city. The villagers being able to enter the large city was a matter worth being proud of. After all, living in Miracle City, not only would they be safer, they would also receive many benefits as citizens in the future, making their lives more colorful. Chu Tion gave 200,000 slots. This was a very good thing for these tribes. Dolores finally let out a long sigh of relief after the meeting was over. It's finally over. We have to think of a way to make money. The current hole in our funds is too big. Meng Qingwu asked, Zero, how long can our financial situation last? Reporting to Sir City Lord, most of our resources have been invested into the reconstruction budget after the war. Zero honestly replied, because the surrounding tribes have been heavily injured and the industrial park has been damaged. Miracle Bank has large amounts of bad debts. Miracle Commerce can't cover them with their current financial situation. If we keep this up, our finances will collapse in 2-3 months. Meng Qingwu tightly knit her brows. It's actually this serious? It seems like we have to open new markets as soon as possible and obtain new income to cover our current situation. Actually, with Miracle Commerce's conditions and abilities, if they were given a year or so to stabilize, these problems would not be a problem at all. The problem was, would there really be such a chance? Meng Qingwu could foresee that in the future, Miracle City would become the focus of the entire forest. They could barely hold on now, but they couldn't go into chaos again. If there was another similar war, Miracle City really wouldn't be able to hold on. Chapter 996. The Source Stones have been loaded. Vivian personally counted the Source Stones several times to make sure none were missing before running in front of Chu Tion to report. I asked Big Brother to check. No need. No need. Vivian is one of us. Could she be unreliable? Vivian's heart felt warm as she happily said, Of course, I'm a person of Miracle City in life and a ghost of Miracle City in death. I won't do anything bad to Miracle City, so Big Brother Chu Tion can trust me. The Elven King couldn't help giving a soft cough. Did this girl even forget what race she was? Miracle Bank's Source Stone reserves instantly increased by over 100,000. This could cover the bad debts and make up for the losses from the war, stabilizing Miracle City's financial situation. Miracle City could use this money as they pleased. Chu Tion wasn't afraid of not being able to pay it back in a year. The Elven King's efficiency is higher than expected, so I won't hesitate. Ying, take out the smart brain. Meng Ying placed the smart brain in front of the Elven King. Your Majesty, this is Miracle Commerce's newest smart brain. Its performance has been slightly increased, and it can calculate 1,300,000,000 times per second. The smart body has also been trained and can recognize orders and learn, but it still needs to be trained. If there are any problems in the future that need to be repaired, or if you need to increase its speed, our Miracle City will take care of it. There will be no after-sales fees. This transaction was clearly not worth it. 150,000 source stones in Miracle Bank would cost several tens of thousands of source stones a year, and using several tens of thousands of source stones to buy a smart brain was a loss no matter how one looked at it. This was because with Miracle Commerce's current manufacturing ability, with the intelligent factory, a smart brain would only cost several hundred source stones at most. This debt couldn't be completely calculated like this. The so-called rare things were precious. Other than Miracle City, the Eternal Forest was the first place to have a smart brain, so managing it in the future would be much easier. The Elven King would have more time to do other things, so it would seem like it was worth it. Anyways, there was no use piling up source stones in the Eternal Forest. Chu Tian then said, "I am a person who knows how to repay kindness. The Elven King has helped Miracle City pass through a large problem, so Miracle City is filled with gratitude. There's a plan to deepen our cooperation with the Eternal Forest. I wonder if the elves are interested." What medicine was this fellow selling? "Your Majesty, the Elven King, understands that Miracle Commerce has countless cutting-edge technologies, but we lack resources and ability, so Miracle Commerce's expansion in the Forest of Chaos has been hindered. The Eternal Forest is the opposite. You have tens of thousands of years of accumulated resources and many large forest cities. You have a large influence in the Forest of Chaos, but you haven't used your resources to their full potential." The Elven King looked at him with a strange gaze. "You want to—" If the two sides worked together, wouldn't the situation change greatly? Chu Tian didn't like beating around the bush, so he directly said his thoughts. "We'll work together to develop the forest. I'll provide the technology, and you provide the manpower, finally sharing the benefits. For example, the Eternal Forest has large amounts of spatial crystals, and there are many people with innate spatial energy. They might not be used in the Eternal Forest for 100 years, but they are incomparably precious resources for Miracle City. If the Elven King takes them out, and we provide the spatial technology, we can create large amounts of transport towers and space warehouses in the forest in a short period of time, creating considerable value. Wouldn't it be a win-win situation in the end?" A glow flashed in the Elven King's eyes. It was like what Chu Tian said. This was a large win for both sides. The elves' wealth and resources were just hoarding. There was no way they could create value. Although Miracle City had large amounts of products and technology, they were limited in scale and background, so it was impossible for them to develop in the forest in a short period of time. In this kind of situation, if both sides cooperated, how could they not advance by leaps and bounds? Vivian exclaimed, "That's a great idea. Royal Father, let's do it. The elves have many talents. Rather than wasting them, it's better to have them work for Miracle City." Chu Tian saw that the Elven King's heart was moved, so he struck while the iron was hot. This way they could display their individual value and also bring benefits to the elves. "Then, what kind of people do you want? As long as they're knowledgeable and have true skills, like being proficient in array theory or alchemy theory. Other than that, there are special talents like spatial attributed, spiritual attributed, and life attributed. The more the better. I want them all. Your appetite is too big. There are many talents in the elves, and most of them are famous people. If the council finds out and rejects this, I'm afraid this matter won't be easy to solve." Chu Tian shrugged. "This will depend on the Elven King's methods. I believe that everything the Elven King does will shine for generations to come, becoming the most important reformer in the history of the elves. Why do you care about these obstacles? A king should have the aggressiveness and boldness of a king." The Elven King gave a soft snort. "It's easy for you to say. I saw that the Elven King has helped me before, so I sincerely want to cooperate with the Eternal Forest. If the Elven King can't even make a decision on this matter, I can only go to Dragon City to cooperate with the Dragon Lord." Chu Tian spread out his hands like he didn't care. The Dragon Lord's resources are not less than the Eternal Forest, and the Dragon Lord cannot resist making money. Big Brother Chu Tian don't. Vivian scratched her head in worry, especially when she heard that Chu Tian was prepared to cooperate with the Black Dragon. She was very worried. "We can't be tied down by those old men anymore." "What are you worried for, you little girl? You should at most believe half of this brat's words. Only he can think of cooperating with the Dragon Lord. Cooperation needed strength to support it. Miracle City was so weak and wanted to negotiate with the Dragon's Ridge. How could they obtain fair treatment? Who in the forest didn't know about the Black Dragon's greed? Not to mention that Deathwing was eyeing Miracle City. Wasn't this asking a tiger for its skin? Miracle City chose to cooperate with the Eternal Forest, so they could only cooperate with the Eternal Forest. All right, you don't need to provoke me. The Elven King said to Chu Tian. Let's talk about the plan first. The elves will take out their spatial crystals to build transport towers, and will first build a transport network in the forest. Other than that, the elves will send as many innate spatial energy users into Miracle City. Vivian will lead the development of space warehouses and the logistics network. Other than that, the elves will support Miracle City's communication infrastructure and the surrounding elven cities. Logistics, people, and information. This was the foundation of all development. This isn't a problem. The Elven King nodded. How will we divide the benefit from the transport towers and space warehouses? Miracle Commerce will take 80%. The Eternal Forest will take 20%. Other than that, the elves can only use and receive dividends, but they don't have the right to manage it. This is too harsh. The Elven King's expression changed, but he didn't get angry with his self-control. The Eternal Forest will only take 20% with their manpower? Don't you think Miracle Commerce is earning a bit too much? Chu Tian revealed a sincere look. You have to understand that spatial crystals are very precious, but with Miracle Commerce's material channels in the outside world, it isn't impossible to buy them. Other than providing the most important technology, Miracle Commerce will also provide the core material, the Eye of the Star, as well as the Smart Brains control system. These are all irreplaceable things. Don't forget, without the elf support, Miracle Commerce will find it hard to develop in the Forest of Chaos. Without the Eternal Forest support and permission, Miracle Commerce can't develop in the elves' territory. Isn't that right? The Elven King said 60% 40. The elves have made enough concessions, and I hope Miracle Commerce can show some expression. Chu Tian calmly shook his head. Your Majesty, Elven King, in terms of our needs, no matter what, the elves are more dependent on Miracle City. If it wasn't for Miracle City, I don't know how long it would take for your reforms to be realized. As for Miracle Commerce, with the Trent's protection, they can at least live in one area, so it doesn't matter if their development is slow. In the worst case, Miracle Commerce can give up on Miracle City. With our team and technology, where can't we go on the continent? So we have no reason to make concessions. The Elven King knit his brows and made concessions again, 70%. Chu Tian was still unmoved. Your Majesty, Elven King should think about it again. This kind of profit sharing, is it really what the Eternal Forest and the elves need? Wrong, completely wrong. After we cooperate, the elves will obtain the rights to use the transport tower and the space warehouse. You should understand that compared to the direct benefits of this technology, the additional value and derivative value are the most precious. The so-called dividend was referring to the future profit sharing of the transport tower and the space warehouse. The so-called right to use the transport tower and the space warehouse was the right to directly eat them. For example, the transport tower could transport 100 people a day and the elves had 20% of the rights. The elves could transport up to 20 times, and as long as the procedures were completed, they could directly eat them. The rights to use the space warehouse were the same. It was like what Chu Tian said. To the elves, the transport tower and the space warehouse were not attractive. What was truly attractive was the development of the elven cities, breaking the elves' countless-year-old barrier in terms of people and logistics. Chu Tian calculated that the Elven King couldn't refuse, so he gave this kind of harsh condition. Miracle City wouldn't let outsiders use too many of these key technologies. 20% was Chu Tian's bottom line. He couldn't increase it any further. The Elven King saw that he couldn't persuade this fellow no matter what, so he could only helplessly sigh and say, "All right, I have a request. The elven areas must be developed first. When the elven areas are complete, we can use the extra resources to develop the surrounding areas. Other than that, We will build an elven small town on the edge of the miracle forest. I hope Miracle City will give us some convenience. Finally, I hope Miracle City can lift the ban on a few products for the Eternal Forest, like the source energy weapons and smart brains. No problem. The three powers were keeping a close eye on Miracle City. Other than the elven areas, it was hard to develop in other areas. They would first connect Miracle City to the elves, and it wouldn't be too late to expand after they had a certain amount of strength. The Elven King and Miracle City completed an agreement. Miracle City would add 10 transport towers and 50 space warehouses in the Forest of Chaos Elven area. Other than that, they would increase the signal coverage area by 30 times, adding 100 arenas, trial fields, shopping malls, and hotels. The main area would be controlled by the elves, and all the manpower and resources would be paid for by the elves. Miracle City would allow the Eternal Forest to develop an elven small town with 10,000 people in a small forest. The small town would pay taxes to Miracle City, but it wouldn't be controlled by Miracle City's management. Other than that, Miracle City would open some uncommercialized products to the elves, including source energy weapons, smart brains, and etc. Even if the Elven King didn't mention these things, Miracle Commerce would sell them in the future. After all, these things were not a small amount of wealth. After the Elven King obtained Chu Tion's permission, it was unknown what method he used to pass the meeting. The first batch of several thousand Eternal Forest elves quickly moved to the Elven small town, including several hundred talents that Chu Tion wanted. Everything was proceeding smoothly. Miracle Commerce had a deep cooperation with the Eternal Forest. If they used the elves' power to expand, Miracle Commerce's influence in the Forest of Chaos would become unprecedentedly strong. However, when Chu Tion was busy making conditions with the Eternal Forest, there was some urgent news coming from the Great Zhou country. Chapter 997. The thing Meng Qingwu was most worried about had finally happened. The ancient tree of life being planted in Miracle City would attract the attention of the forest giants, making the relationship between Miracle City and the Eternal Forest even more complicated. This was because the ancient tree of life was like a god to the wood elves, just like how the demonic god religion worshipped the little fox. How could the elves allow such an important divine item to be possessed by a group of outsiders? If this conflict couldn't be resolved, there would be a large problem. In front of the Eternal Forest, Miracle City's strength was too insignificant. Meng Qingwu did not dare be negligent. She put down what she was doing and rushed over. Vivian wanted to build the transport tower for the Eternal Forest to benefit both Miracle City and the Eternal Forest, but when several dozen Elven Council members were sent over, the entire matter developed in a completely unexpected direction. The ancient tree of life had already grown to around 2 meters in just 2-3 days. The life energy it released was even more vigorous, and it began to display its abilities. This divine tree was planted in the center of the garden, and it immediately connected to the several hundred-mile spiritual veins. It extracted even more pure spiritual energy from the depths of the spiritual veins, nourishing the surrounding soil by 10 to 100 times. Its effect surpassed the best spirit-gathering array. Miracle City's spiritual energy became more abundant, and each grain of soil was filled with energy. The ancient tree of life could continuously release life energy, nourishing all the surrounding plants and animals, especially the elixirs in the garden. Their growth in a day was equivalent to a month of growth in the past. In other words, the growth of a sacred herb in several weeks was equivalent to a year in a normal environment. If an herb was planted for several years, wouldn't it become a 1,000-year-old herb? Even if Miracle City didn't do anything, they could just buy large amounts of low-age herbs and sell them to earn large amounts of money. Not to mention the fact that the ancient tree of life had just been born for a few days, its growth potential was unimaginable. Who wouldn't be tempted by this kind of divine object? Not to mention the ancient tree of life had a special meaning to the Eternal Forest elves. Once the ancient tree of life was planted, it would be very difficult to transplant it. At least they didn't have the conditions to transplant it right now. The Eternal Forest elves had no other choice. They could only think of one method, which was to take away Miracle City and let Miracle City become an elven city again. This was something Vivian never thought of. You don't have the strength to protect Miracle City, and you don't have the strength to protect the ancient tree of life. The Elven Council member had a firm attitude as he pointed at Chu Tian's nose and shouted, "This tree is too important to the elves. This is the elves' supreme divine object. Could it be you want to take it for yourself?" "That's right. From today on, Miracle City will be protected by the Eternal Forest." Another Elven Council member said, "Of course, the Eternal Forest will remember everything you have done for the Eternal Forest. The elves will give you enough compensation." The Elven Council's attitude was very consistent. Even Ulysses wanted the elves to personally protect the city. Meng Qingwu felt that the situation had become troublesome when she saw this. The Elven Council's attitude was very firm, like there was no room for negotiation. Miracle Commerce had put in so much effort in a Miracle City. How could they just give it up like this? Ha ha ha. Are you playing dumb, or have you all lost your memories? Chu Tian took out a scroll from his chest. Miracle City has completely severed its relationship with the Eternal Forest. The Eternal Forest's Elven Council and the Elven King have agreed to recognize Miracle City's sovereignty and will not violate it. This contract has the signatures of every member and the Elven King. Could it be that the elves who respect the law and the spirit of contracts are going to go against it today? The Elven Council members all had ugly expressions. Now they finally understood that they had been tricked by Chu Tian. This fellow had definitely been deliberately drawing a line with the Eternal Forest a few days ago. He had already expected this situation after the ancient tree of life appeared. Chu Tian continued to say, "You elves who boast of your civilization, are you prepared to go back on your words?" The expressions of the Elven Council members all changed. Although the elves were divided into conservative and reformist factions, they were still the elves in the end. They were very protective of contracts and laws. After all, this represented the spirit of the elves and was the reason why the elves were so confident. Augustus stood up in a bit of anger. "Human, this is such an obvious trick. Do you think the elves don't have brains? You can say whatever you want." Chu Tian laughed. "The Eternal Forest is 100 times stronger than Miracle City, and Miracle City is definitely weak. Bullying the weak and breaking the contract. What can I do? Just come. At worst you can kill me and show the hypocrisy of the elves to the world." "Big Brother Chu Tian, don't be angry." Vivian saw that the situation was bad, and she quickly stood up. "Grandfather Speaker, why do you have to force Big Brother Chu Tian? If there wasn't Big Brother Chu Tian, would Miracle City still be Miracle City? Why can't we work together?" "Don't worry. The fairy clan disdains bullying the weak." Augusta gave a cold snort. "It's just a contract made from a piece of paper. It can't bind the Eternal Forest." "The elves will take back Miracle City legally." Chu Tian gave Vivian a look. How hard was it to deal with this group of rotten wood? The elves had a fatal flaw in their character. No matter how old they were, how long they lived, or how much knowledge they had accumulated, they would always be simple and inflexible. The elves' tedious laws, Chu Tian could find dozens of loopholes even with his eyes closed. Also, with the elves' slow work efficiency, if they really wanted to argue with Chu Tian, who knew when they would be able to come to a conclusion. Ulysses had interacted with Chu Tian before, so he knew that this wasn't a good idea. He immediately gave a suggestion. "Chu Tian, we know that you've invested your heart and soul in a Miracle City, but the elves are not an unreasonable race. Why don't we trade cities for cities to compensate you?" "What trade cities? Give me a map." Ulysses opened a large map, circling an area in the southern part of the Forest of Chaos. This forest is called the Silver Moon Forest. It is not worse than Miracle City in every aspect. The elves have been in Silver Moon City for 5,000 years. It is several times more prosperous than Miracle City, with only a few hundred years of history. Not only are there no opponents in the surrounding several thousand miles, there is also a perfect natural barrier and city defense system. If you can enter it, You will have all the resources in your hands. You will still be the city lord of the forest, but your wealth will increase by 10 times. Meng Qingwu was speechless hearing this from the side. These elves were really willing to take out their hands. The other elven counselors revealed difficult expressions. The Silver Moon Forest was the most prosperous city in the Eternal Forest, but in order to obtain Miracle City, they actually made this kind of decision. This was truly hard on them. We won't trade. You. The elven counselors slapped the table one by one. This human was too arrogant. The elves had clearly made a large concession and given the compensation. What else did he want? There was a reason why Chu Tian disdained Silver Moon City. Silver Moon City was an elven city, and the elves were a highly xenophobic race. If Chu Tian chose to accept the elven city, once the elves left, it would be the same as obtaining an empty city. What use did he have for an empty city? How could Chu Tian care about this bit of wealth and benefits in front of him? In comparison to Miracle City, although it wasn't complete in all aspects, Chu Tian had already gained a foothold here. This place had the best laboratory and the most scholars in the forest, and was in the center of the Forest of Chaos, containing a large amount of potential. The most important thing was the ancient Tree of Life. It had a very important meaning to Chu Tian. You have to understand, I'm not doing this for myself. This is also for the Eternal Forest and the elves. Chu Tian knew that he had to use reason to deal with these elves. The Eternal Forest rule over Miracle City has 3 fatal flaws. Not only will it make it impossible for you to protect the ancient Tree of Life, it will even cause the entire Eternal Forest to fall into danger. Nonsense. Alarmist words. Chu Tian didn't care what these old elves said as he continued to explain. First, Miracle City and the surrounding several thousand miles are filled with many different races. This is not compatible with the elves. The elves' culture cannot be established here at all. Could it be that the elves want to chase away these 10 million people? Second, the elves are slow and have no motivation. It would be fine if it was a normal city. You can slowly build a city with your long lifespan. But Miracle City is a land of war, and there is the ancient Tree of Life as the fuse. Do you still have time to slowly build a city? Third, the ancient Tree of Life is a relic from the great ancient era, so the elves will naturally have a large increase in strength once they obtain it. However, the ancient Tree of Life needs a very long time to grow. Do you think the other forest powers will sit and watch you grow? Chu Tian clearly wasn't speaking nonsense. At least the elves had no choice but to face these problems. How would the Eternal Forest develop in Miracle City, and how would they face pressure from all sides? Of course, these problems were not considered by the Elven Council. Although the elves didn't like fighting, they had absolute confidence in their own strength. They did not fear fighting against the forest giants. They just wanted to bring back the ancient Tree of Life. The ancient Tree of Life was too important to the elves. When Augusta was prepared to refute Chu Tian, Chu Tian's words aren't wrong. The Elven King, who didn't say anything from the start, spoke up. Let's not discuss Miracle City's matters for now. We might have some trouble. Trouble? What trouble? While everyone was puzzled, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the sky. It was as if a hole had been punched in the sky. Soon after, several shadows appeared on the horizon. One of them was a huge shadow. From afar, it was at least 100 meters long. Its entire body was pitch black and covered in black scales. It had an incomparably huge pair of wings. Wherever it flew, even the forest was torn apart by its powerful aura. Augusta's expression fell. This is... Chapter 998. The Great Zhou country had sent news before that Chun Bingyu, Yin's spirit, and Yoda's group had a conflict with the 5 spiritual mountains. Although the situation was very tense, they had not fought yet. At this time, Yoda had locked onto the Great Zhou royal family ruins. Since he had locked onto it, he would go find it. What was so strange about it? Actually, before heading to the ruins, Yoda had felt a strong sense of danger. You know that the druid's prophetic ability is very special. Since he could feel danger, it meant that this trip was very dangerous. Therefore, Yoda was prepared. If he didn't return to the heavenly Een Mountains in 3 days, the Black Moon sect would contact us for help. Then how many days have passed? We've lost contact for around 5 days. 5 days? What is going on? Meng Qingwu knit her brows, and her expression became a bit serious as she said with a face of worry. From the situation from that side, Yoda's group seemed to have just left the heavenly Een Mountains when they were attacked and chased. The heavenly Een sect has been surrounded by the 5 large sects, and this battle has lasted for several days. Our side is also in turmoil, so the news has been delayed. Did something happen to them? I don't think so. At least they have the ability to escape with the transport scroll, so they must have been trapped for some reason. However, it is very strange. Yoda is a spirit transformation expert. There shouldn't be an expert that can suppress him in the Great Zhou country. Chu Tian thought about it for a few seconds. This matter is very strange. Have Nangong quickly gather some people. I want to personally take a look. Miracle City's matters had been very complicated recently. Not only did they have to monitor the 3 large powers, they also had to speed up their cooperation with the elves. However, they had to take a look at the Great Zhou country, so Chu Tian could only leave this matter to Meng Qingwu. Luckily, Meng Qingwu was very efficient, and there were more and more smart brains in the city, so there shouldn't be any problems. When Nangong Yin heard that there was going to be a fight, she immediately called several dozen people over. These people were all experts in the 3rd True Spirit layer and were all peak experts in Miracle City. Chu Tian found a little fox that was stealing food in the garden, and they didn't say anything as they teleported to the Great Zhou country. Endless Een saw Chu Tian's group arrive, and he quickly excitedly came forward. Why are you only here now? The sect master has been missing for an entire 5 days. The heavenly Een Mountain has been surrounded for 5 days, and we won't be able to hold on if this continues. I'm sorry. Chu Tian could only wave his hand. Miracle City has also met a bit of trouble. Haven't they just calmed down? Een Spirit will be fine. Just tell me the situation first. Chu Tian looked around and found that the heavenly Een Mountain had changed quite a bit. There were holes in the surrounding mountain peaks, and there were many signs of battle on the main peak of the heavenly Een Mountain. The buildings in front of the mountain gate had all been destroyed, and the square was covered in cracks, just like an earthquake. There were some places that were very new, with flames and ashes still floating in the air. Fuck, what happened? Endless Een spoke of the matter with a dejected expression. After the Black Moon sect decided to support the Great Zhou royal family's reconstruction, we were immediately opposed by the other sections. Of course, this was expected. The Black Moon sect could have used their 100-year relationship to pull 1 or 2 of the 5 large sects to support us, using this kind of stalemate to avoid a battle. Then how did it become like this? We don't know what happened. The stalemate was good, and your Miracle City's prophet Yoda found the ruins. When they left the heavenly Een Mountain to explore the ruins, there were no signs at all. Endless Yin's face was very ugly. The 5 large sects worked together to attack the heavenly Een Mountain. If it wasn't for the heavenly Een Mountain's protective array, perhaps this place would have been blown to pieces. Beaten to this state in just a few days, Nangong Yin had a look of disdain. What happened to the 10,000-year-old protective array of your heavenly Een Mountain? Is that thing made of paper? Don't speak nonsense. Endless Een and the Black Moon sect's elders were filled with anger from shame. Fuck, if it wasn't for you people, how could the heavenly Een Mountain offend the other 5 spiritual mountains at the same time? If it wasn't to help the damn Great Zhou royal family rebuild their country, the Black Moon sect wouldn't have to fight so many people. Endless Een explained with a calm expression. During these battles, we found a few strange things. The 5 sects have large amounts of tamed demon beasts helping them fight. This kind of fighting style is rarely seen in the Great Zhou country, and most of the demon beasts they use aren't from the Great Zhou country. Other than that, there are many mysterious experts among them. What experts? We can't be sure. The only thing we can be sure of is that we have never seen these experts before because whether it is their fighting style or techniques, they aren't like Great Zhou people. There were many experts in the 6 famous mountains of the Great Zhou country, and these experts understood each other very well. Even if they had never fought before, they would at least understand each other's styles and could recognize each other when they had a chance to interact. But these mysterious people's styles were different from the Great Joe country. They were definitely not normal Great Joe experts. Endless Yin's face became uglier and uglier. The previous wave of attacks has just ended. If my guesses aren't wrong, they will soon launch a new wave of attacks. There's this kind of thing. Chu Tian patted the little white fox on his shoulder. Fox, go take a look at them. The fox opened its divine eye and looked at the cultivator camps around the heavenly Yin mountain. There were around 400,000-500,000 of them, and they were all elites from large sections. When the fox looked at the center, it suddenly discovered something. It suddenly raised its head and waved its claws like a hungry wolf baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. What? You're talking about a spirit beast. The little fox nodded. Nangong Yun said in a surprised voice, "Isn't the Great Zhou country a human kingdom? I've never heard of a spirit beast appearing in the mirror before." It's not strange. The Great Zhou country borders the Eagle Burial Kingdom to the north, the Warhounds Plains to the northwest, and the Forest of Chaos to the south. These places have a chance of spirit beasts entering, so it's not strange for spirit beasts to appear in the Great Zhou country. But Chu Tian narrowed his eyes and said, "These spirit beasts are not natives of the forest, and they're not remnants of the Warhounds Plains." Nangong Yin blurted out, "They're people from the Eagle Burial Kingdom." Chu Tian nodded. "Most likely. I never thought that the Eagle Burial Kingdom's tentacles would stretch even further than we imagined. If the Eagle Burial Kingdom's influence is involved, then the Great Zhou country situation will become more complicated." "What do we do now? What else can we do now? We'll talk after we take care of the people at the bottom of the mountain." Endless Yin saw that when Chu Tian said this, it was as easy as drinking a cup of water in front of him. He couldn't help revealing a look of disbelief. "Are you crazy? These are the elites of the 5 large sects. It is already hard for us to defend them, not to mention taking care of them. What are you shouting for?" Nangong Yin seemed even angrier than when she was questioned. "If boss says it's fine, then it's fine. Shut your fucking mouth. Otherwise, don't blame this old lady for beating you until you're half paralyzed." Nangong Yun's fiery temper made her not hesitate to fight. Endless Yin could feel that this fiery red-haired woman was a bit stronger than Chun Bingyu. With Endless Yin's strength, he definitely wasn't her match, not to mention that Nangong Yun brought several dozen subordinates who were all experts of Miracle City. He had to lower his head under the eaves. "Boss, how do you think we should take care of them? These people have an overwhelming advantage over the Heavenly Yin Mountain, so they are a bit lax. Almost all of their people are stationed in the same valley. Nangong, tell Ying to send some things over. We'll need them soon." 2 hours later. Chu Tian took out 5 sets of source energy weapons from the space warehouse. When they were put together, they were actually 5 missile launchers. Miracle Commerce had missile weapons a long time ago, but they were very low grade before, but the situation was different now. "Boss, the control panel is ready." Nangong Yin stood in front of a temporary platform with giant black boxes around her. This was clearly a super source energy matrix, and the control panel itself was a miniature undead tower. "Turn on Smart Brain and open the control panel." "All right." Smart Brain was awakened and immediately said, "Hello, Sir City Lord. I am Smart Brain number 3, and my main ability is the weapon management system. What can I do for you?" Chu Tian pointed at the densely packed life signals on the radar. "Use the Snake Scorpion missile and kill these fellows." "Understood, Sir City Lord." Distance 56. 3,121 kilometers. Currently simulating the best trajectory. Finished. Launch the Snake Scorpion creature poison missile. The 5 missile launchers began to adjust their direction and pause for 3-4 seconds. Suddenly, all the missile launchers shook, and each launcher shot out 5 to 6 slender missiles. These missiles came from Great Summer Qing State. The Great Summer Country's Qing State's Green Ridge was ravaged by snake scorpion beasts all year round, and Chu Tian and Chen Bingyu had almost suffered a large loss. However, Miracle Commerce found out that the snake scorpion beast poison was a strong paralyzing poison that could spread over a large area in a short period of time. It could paralyze a soldier to death. Therefore, researchers collected large amounts of the snake scorpion beast poison. They first added several strong paralysis toxins to the snake scorpion beast poison before refining it into a highly concentrated liquid. Finally, it was compressed into a missile, creating this era's biological weapon. This kind of weapon was cheap and simple to make. The only flaw was that it was easy to accidentally injure people because the snake scorpion missile's compressed poison was very volatile. As long as a missile exploded in a group of people, it would instantly cover over 1,000 meters, poisoning everyone. Before the Smart Brains Control Launchpad was developed, there was no possibility of this type of weapon being used in practice. Today could be considered the first test. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.